Hello there, Wanderers of the Night. Welcome back to Midnight Reddit Tales. We've gathered some of the deepest, most intriguing stories the internet has to hide after dark. If you enjoy these midnight dives, please leave a like, subscribe, and join our nocturnal community. Now let the shadows fall, and let's jump straight into the tales.
Story 1.
It started with 4 words. 4 words that Chloe dropped on me like a bag of rocks during a perfectly normal Tuesday night dinner. "I think we're broken," she said, pushing a piece of salmon around her plate. I put my fork down. "Broken? What are you talking about? We're fine." "No, Thomas." Asterisk. "We're times not fine." Asterisk. "I'm times not fine." She looked at me, her eyes holding a kind of disappointed exhaustion I'd never seen before. "You're just not here. You're not emotionally available." The accusation hit me like a phantom punch. Me, not available. I was the one who planned our dates, who remembered the name of her annoying coworker, who always made sure the coffee was ready in the morning. I was the rock. That was my job. "Chloe, that's not fair," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "I'm right here. I'm always here." "Being physically in the room isn't the same as being present," she sighed, and that was that. The conversation was over. The verdict was in. I was the problem. For the next 2 months, I tried to fix it. I read articles on emotional intimacy. I suggested counseling, which she shot down as too dramatic. I planned a weekend trip to a cabin, just the 2 of us. I left little notes in her work bag. Every effort I made was met with a polite but distant thank you. It was like trying to hug a statue. Then Mark came into the picture. He and his wife were our friends, part of our core group. When they announced their divorce, it was a shock to everyone. Chloe especially took it hard. "He's a wreck, Thomas," she told me one night, scrolling through her phone on the couch, a good 6 feet of space between us. "He has no one. I'm just going to go have a drink with him, make sure he's okay." I didn't think anything of it. Of course she should. Mark was our friend. "Yeah, good idea. Tell him I'm thinking of him." 1 drink turned into 2. A weeknight check-in became a 4-hour vent session. Soon, I'm meeting Mark became a near daily refrain. It was always framed as an act of selfless friendship. She was his lifeline, the only one who truly understood what he was going through. "He's just so lost," she'd say when she came home late, smelling of wine and someone else's cigarettes. "I'm just helping him." My unease started as a low hum, a barely audible frequency of doubt. I tried to shut it down. She was a good person, a caring friend. I was just being jealous, insecure. I was the broken one, remember? I was the one who wasn't emotionally available. A good husband would be supportive. So I was supportive. "How's Mark doing?" I'd ask, trying to show I was on the team. "Better," she'd say, her thumbs flying across her phone screen. "It's a long process." The long process started to include late-night phone calls that she'd take on the porch, weekend afternoons. Spent running errands that somehow always involved a stop at Mark's new apartment. I tried to bring it up gently once. "You're spending a lot of time with him, Chloe. Are you sure you're taking care of yourself too?" Her head snapped up from her phone. "Are you serious? The man's life just fell apart?" "I'm being a good friend." "Is that a problem for you?" "No, of course not. Because it sounds like a problem. It sounds like you don't trust me." The accusation hung in the air, thick and suffocating. "I trust you," I said, a lie I was desperate to believe. I retreated. I apologized. I was the problem. Again. We had a trip to Patagonia planned for months. 18 months of marriage, and this was our first big adventure. I saw it as our chance. 10 days of hiking in epic landscapes, no Mark, no distractions. A hard reset. I put all my hope into that trip. The week before we were supposed to leave the house felt like a pressure cooker. Chloe was a ghost, flitting from room to room, packing in silence, her phone permanently attached to her hand. She'd angle the screen away from me whenever I walked in. I told myself it was just pre-trip stress. The plan was for her to fly out Tuesday morning. I'd follow on Wednesday after wrapping up a big project at work. We'd meet in Santiago. Tuesday morning came. I got up to make coffee, same as always. She was already dressed, her suitcase by the door. She looked agitated. "Hey," I said, trying for a normal smile. "Ready for the big trip?" "Yep," she said, not looking at me, just checking her purse for the third time. Passport, wallet, phone. Okay. "My flight gets in at 9 p.m. tomorrow. I'll meet you at the hotel bar." I walked over to hug her, to give her a proper goodbye, a kiss, to launch our great reconnecting adventure. She turned her head so my lips landed on her cheek. It was a cold, stiff, dismissive gesture. She pulled away before I could even fully wrap my arms around her. "The Uber's here," she said, grabbing her suitcase. "I'll see you there." And she was gone. No, I love you. No, travel safe. Just an abrupt exit that left the front door swinging shut with a hollow click. I stood in the silent hallway, the smell of her perfume hanging in the air. The low hum of doubt I'd been suppressing for months was now a screaming alarm. Something was wrong. Terribly, fundamentally wrong. I spent the rest of the day in a fog trying to focus on work, but replaying that cold goodbye over and over. That night I packed my own bag. I laid out my hiking gear on the bed we shared, and a wave of profound loneliness washed over me. This was supposed to be our trip. * our times bed. What was I even trying to save? I walked into her closet to grab a travel adapter from her suitcase shelf. And there it was. Sitting on her jewelry box, the little black screen dark, was her Apple Watch. She never went anywhere without it. Forgetting it was like forgetting a limb. My heart started hammering against my ribs. Don't do it. Just leave it. It's an invasion of privacy. You're being paranoid. But the cold cheek, the hidden phone screen, the late nights with Mark, it all swirled together into a toxic cocktail of suspicion I could no longer ignore. My hand trembled as I picked it up. I pressed the side button. The screen lit up. A cascade of notifications. All from the same name. ****. Mark *****. I miss you already. ****. Mark ****. Can't believe you're really going. This is going to be the longest 10 days of my life. *****. Mark ****. I love you so much. *****. Mark ****. Just land safely and tell me you're mine. ****. The air left my lungs in a single silent gasp. My vision tunneled. The floor seemed to drop out from under me. I fumbled with the watch, my fingers clumsy and numb, scrolling up, going deeper. It was all there. Hundreds of messages. Pet names. Explicit details of their last meetup. Plans they were making for when she got back. Pictures. A whole secret life lived right under my nose in my own house. A line from her sent just last night while I was sleeping beside her burned itself onto my brain. ****, Chloe, ****. I just have to get through this stupid trip. Then I'm all yours. I promise. ****. I sank to the floor, the watch still clutched in my hand, its screen glowing with the evidence of my own stupidity. My lungs burned. My stomach twisted into a knot of ice and acid. I didn't just read the words. I felt them. Each one. A physical blow. ****. I love you so much. Tell me you're mine. ****. My first instinct was primal. I wanted to smash something. To hurl the watch against the wall and watch it shatter into a million pieces, just like my life had. but a cold, terrifying calm washed over me instead. I took a picture of the screen with my phone. Then another, and another. I documented everything, every pet name, every promise, every lie. Then I called her. I knew her plane would have landed in Santiago by now. It rang twice. Hey, you're not going to believe this. The line for customs is insane, she said. Her voice bright and breezy. The voice of a wife on vacation. I said nothing. Thomas, are you there? The connection's terrible. I found your watch, Chloe. The silence on the other end was absolute. It was so complete, I could hear the background chatter of the airport fade away, as if she'd stepped into a soundproof room. Oh, she finally whispered. A single, pathetic syllable. Just land safely and tell me you're mine. I read from my phone, my voice flat dead. I just have to get through this stupid trip. Then I'm all yours. Thomas, I can explain. Can you explain the pictures? Can you explain how you were fucking our friend in our bed while I was at work trying to pay for this stupid trip? The words came out like venom. I felt a wild, unhinged laugh bubble up in my chest. I was losing my mind. It's not what you think, she started the classic insulting line. You've been so distant. So unavailable. Mark was just there. He listened to me. He times me. The gaslighting was so textbook it was almost impressive. She was reading directly from the Cheater's Handbook. I see you, I said, my voice dropping to a low growl. I see you for exactly what you are. Don't bother coming home. Get a lawyer. I hung up before she could respond. I blocked her number. Then I blocked Mark's. I sat on the floor of her closet for an hour, surrounded by her clothes and her scent, and felt absolutely nothing. I was hollowed out. A shell. That night I didn't sleep. I fell into a Reddit rabbit hole. R. Surviving infidelity. I read hundreds of stories. A Greek chorus of betrayal. The advice was brutal and unanimous. Go, scorched earth. Protect yourself. She is not your friend anymore. The next morning I called a lawyer. A man with a sharp voice and no time for my emotional breakdown. He gave me a checklist. 1. Separate finances. Immediately. 2. Change the locks. 3. Communicate only through lawyers. 4. Get her out of the house. You owned the house before the marriage, he asked. Yes. Good. That makes it easier. It's your primary asset. We protect it at all costs. When Chloe finally got back from Chile a week later, a week I spent living on whiskey and protein bars, the locks were changed. Her suitcases were packed and waiting on the front porch. I watched from the window as she stared at them, her face a mask of disbelief, before she called an Uber defeated. She went to Mark's. Of course she did. A week after that, she started calling from a blocked number. Crying. Apologizing. Begging. She swore it was over with Mark. She said she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. She was lost, confused, broken. She used the words I'd once believed were about me, about times, us times, and weaponized them. And God help me, a part of me listened. The part that still remembered the woman I married, not the monster who'd obliterated my trust. We were 18 months in. Was I really going to throw it all away? Counseling, I said, my voice weak. One chance. We go to counseling and you never speak to him again. Ever. She agreed instantly. Anything, Thomas. I'll do anything. We went to one session. It was a disaster. She cried. I stared at the wall. The therapist used words like communication breakdown and unmet needs. I wanted to scream. I'd had an unmet need for my wife not to screw our friend. That night, Chloe made dinner. She tried to hold my hand. It was a pathetic pantomime of a marriage. She promised me again she hadn't spoken to Mark since she got back. I blocked his number, she said, looking me right in the eye. He doesn't exist to me anymore. The next day, a notification popped up on my phone from our shared banking app. I'd forgotten to remove her. Asterisk, asterisk, $32.50. At the tap room. Asterisk, asterisk. I knew the tap room. It was 2 blocks from Mark's apartment. My heart hammered in my chest. It could be anything. A coincidence. She could be meeting a girlfriend. The excuses my brain tried to manufacture were pathetic. I knew. I just knew. I got in my car. I didn't have a plan. I just drove. I parked across the street, my engine off, feeling like a stalker in my own life. 10 minutes later, they walked out together. She was laughing, her head thrown back in, that way she did when she thought something was hilarious. He put his arm around her waist, pulling her in. She leaned into him, her body fitting against his, as if it were made for it. They didn't kiss. They didn't have to. It was more intimate than a kiss. It was the easy, comfortable body language of a long-term couple. The cold calm was gone. In its place was a rage so pure and white-hot it scorched my insides. I drove home, my hands shaking on the wheel. This was the real end. The final brutal amputation of hope. The weeks that followed were a blur of pain. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I paced the empty rooms of my house for hours, screaming into pillows until my throat was raw. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat. The image of her laughing with him burned into my mind. The divorce proceedings stalled. She refused to sign anything, refused to engage with my lawyer's settlement offer. She was trying to bleed me dry to drag it out. One day, pacing the living room, I stared at the half-painted wall we were supposed to finish together. I picked up the roller and I finished it. The next day, I tore out the old backsplash in the kitchen. I channeled every ounce of rage and grief into ripping my house apart and putting it back together better. Stronger. I worked until my hands were raw and my muscles screamed, because physical pain was a welcome distraction from the inferno in my head. I canceled our Patagonia flights and booked a solo trip to Colorado. I hiked until my legs gave out, standing on top of a mountain, gasping in the thin air, feeling utterly alone, and yet for the first time in months feeling a flicker of something other than pain. It was just quiet. The healing is not linear. It's a messy, brutal slog. Most days are still hard. I see a couple holding hands and I feel a pang of phantom limb pain. The loneliness at night can be a physical weight. But I keep going. I lean on the faceless strangers on Reddit, my tribe of the betrayed. They get it. They don't offer platitudes. They offer grim understanding. She's gone. The woman I loved, the woman I built a life with, was an illusion. Accepting that is the hardest part. She wasn't stolen from me. She didn't exist in the first place. All that's left now is me, this house I'm slowly rebuilding, and the long open road ahead.
Story 2.
The arc flash from the TIG welder is a beautiful, violent thing. A miniature star hotter than the surface of the sun, born and dying 1,000 times a second. It's the only place I feel any real sense of peace. Under the helmet, with the hiss of argon gas and the steady hum of the machine, the world just melts away. I ran a final bead down the seam of a custom stainless steel exhaust manifold, the puddle of molten metal following my torch like a loyal dog. Perfect. A stack of dimes, clean and strong. My grandfather taught me this. Not my dad. My dad was busy being 17. My parents were kids when they had me. The classic small-town horror story, captain of the football team, head cheerleader, a bit too much cheap beer in the back of a pickup truck. Boom. Instant family. They weren't ready. They weren't parents. They were children raising a child, and they resented me for it. So I was mostly raised by my grandparents. Their house was my home. My grandpa's garage was my sanctuary. While my parents were out finding themselves, which usually meant working dead-end jobs and fighting in the parking lot of some dive bar, I was learning to wrench, to measure, to build. Grandpa put a tool in my hand before I could properly read. A man who can work with his hands will never go hungry. Arthur, he'd say, his voice raspy from a lifetime of unfiltered cigarettes. He was right. I was never hungry. My parents, on the other hand, they were always starving for something. Approval, a second chance, a do-over. They got it when I was 12. That's when my sister Chloe was born. By then, Mom and Dad had finally stumbled into their late 20s. They had matching low-level management jobs at a bong box store, a small rented house, and a decade of regret. Chloe was their mulligan, their golden child. The baby they meant times to have. Suddenly they were parents of the year. Everything was for Chloe. T-ball, piano lessons, art classes, gymnastics. You name it, they paid for it. Their entire lives, their entire identities became wrapped up in being Chloe's parents. And I became a piece of furniture. A live-in older brother-shaped appliance they occasionally remembered to acknowledge. I was the inconvenient walking, talking reminder of their teenage mistake. It didn't matter. By the time Chloe was starting kindergarten, I was a junior in high school with a part-time job in a fabrication shop, a job my grandpa got me. I saved every penny. I learned everything I could. When my parents were screaming at each other over which pre-K program had the best creative expression curriculum for their 5-year-old prodigy, I was learning to weld titanium. I left home at 18 and never looked back. I worked, I saved, I built my business from the ground up. With a loan from my grandparents, which I paid back with interest in 3 years. Now, at 28, I own my own custom fab shop. I have a house I bought with cash, a truck that's paid for, and more work than I can handle. I'm not rich, but I'm comfortable. I'm secure. I'm everything my parents never were. The buzz of my phone on the workbench sliced through the quiet hum of the workshop. I killed the welder, flipped up my helmet, and wiped the sweat from my brow. The caller ID flashed times, Mom asterisk. A familiar knot tightened in my stomach. They never called just to chat. Hey, I answered my voice flat. Arthur, honey, how are you? Her voice was sickeningly sweet, the one she used when she was about to ask for something. I'm fine, Mom. Working. What's up? Oh, nothing. Just wanted to see how my successful son is doing. Your father and I are so proud of you, you know. I grunted in response, pulling off my gloves. The lie was so practiced, so worn, it was almost comfortable. Listen, she continued, getting to the point. Your father and I were wondering if we could stop by tonight. We have some exciting news about Chloe and, well, we'd like to talk to you about it in person. Exciting news. It's incredible, just life-changing for her. We'll be there around 7. She didn't wait for an answer. The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a long moment, the silence of the garage pressing in. This wasn't just a favor. The in-person visit, the syrupy sweet tone. This was big. This was a 5-alarm fire. They arrived at 7 on the dot, my father awkwardly clutching a 6-pack of beer I wouldn't drink, and my mother carrying a grocery store cake. They walked into my house like tourists, gawking at the clean lines, the solid wood furniture I'd built myself, the general lack of financial chaos they'd lived in their entire lives. "Oh, Arthur, this place is just beautiful," my mother gushed, setting the cake on my granite countertop. "You've done so well for yourself." "It's a good house," my dad added, setting the beer next to the cake. "Solid." We engaged in about 10 minutes of excruciating small talk. I offered them a water. They talked about their jobs. I nodded. Then my mom clapped her hands together, a signal that the performance was about to begin. "Okay, so our big news," she announced, her eyes sparkling. "Chloe has been accepted into the summer intensive program at the Northwood Ballet Academy." I'd heard of it. It was one of those elite, ridiculously expensive camps for serious dancers. Chloe had been doing ballet since she was 3. It was her times thing, asterisk. Or rather, it was my parents' asterisk thing times for her. Wow. "That's great," I said, managing a flicker of sincerity. Chloe was a good kid. She deserved good things. "It's more than great, Arthur. It's the opportunity of a lifetime," my dad jumped in, leaning forward on the sofa. "This is the feeder program for the biggest companies in the country. If she does well here, she's set. A professional career is practically guaranteed." "She's so gifted," Mom added, dabbing at a non-existent tear. "She's worked so hard for this. She's a star." I took a slow sip of my water, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It was a very expensive shoe. "The thing is, son," my mom started, her voice softening, her hands folding in her lap. "It's a very prestigious program. And with prestige comes a certain cost. Your father and I have run the numbers. And with the mortgage and our bills, we just can't swing it on our own. Here it comes." My father cleared his throat, sitting up straighter. He put on his serious man face, the one he probably used at work when he had to tell someone they couldn't return an open blender. He looked me dead in the eye, his expression a clumsy mix of pride and desperation. "The program costs $20,000, Arthur. We need you to cover it." The silence in the room stretched out thin and fragile. My father's desperate, proud expression froze on his face. My mother's smile faltered, becoming a brittle, painted-on thing. $20,000. Not a loan. A payment. For services not rendered. I didn't blink. I didn't even take a breath. No. The word landed on the coffee table between us with the force of a hammer. Simple. Absolute. My mother flinched as if I'd slapped her. What do you mean, no?" she stammered, her voice a wounded whisper. "I mean no," I repeated, keeping my voice level. "I'm not giving you $20,000. Arthur, this is for Chloe." My dad cut in, his voice rising, taking on the fake patient tone he used when I was a teenager, and he was pretending to be a parent. "This isn't for us. This is for your sister's future. She's so talented," my mom added, her eyes starting to well up. "She looks up to you so much. Don't you want to see her succeed? You have more money than you know what to do with. Look at this place." Her hand swept out, gesturing at the walls, the furniture, the life I had built while they were busy with their do-over. I felt a cold laugh building in my chest. It was so perfectly predictably them. They didn't see a life I had built. They saw a resource they could tap. An ATM that happened to be their son. I leaned forward, placing my water glass on a coaster with methodical precision. "You know what? You're right," I said, my voice dangerously soft. "It's not fair that I don't contribute. So I'll make you a deal." Their faces lit up with a pathetic flicker of hope. "I'll write you a check right now," I continued, "for the exact amount of money you spent on all of my childhood activities. We can start with my soccer league fees. Then my swim club membership. Oh, and we can't forget the money for my band instrument in middle school. Let's add it all up." I paused, letting them do the math. Letting them remember the endless afternoons I spent in my grandpa's garage because they were never there. What do you think that comes to? All my lessons, all my equipment, all the travel? I let the silence hang in the air for another 3 seconds. That's right, I said, my voice turning to ice. 0. The grand total is 0. So that's my contribution. Nothing. The same thing you gave me. My father's face went from confused to crimson in a heartbeat. Don't be an idiot, Arthur. That was it. The word that broke the dam. All the years of being an afterthought, of being the inconvenient reminder of their failure, it all came rushing out. But not in a shout. In a quiet, brutal wave. An idiot, I looked from his furious face to my mother's tear-streaked one. I'm not the idiot. I'm not the one who was broke at 17 because you couldn't keep your hands off each other. I'm not the one still living paycheck to paycheck 30 years later because you never learned how to manage money. You couldn't afford me then and you can't afford Chloe now. The only thing that's changed is which kid you're failing. The sound my mother made was a choked gasp. My father shot to his feet, knocking his knee on the coffee table. He didn't seem to feel it. You selfish bastard, he spat, his voice thick with rage. After everything we've done for you. The sheer, unadulterated absurdity of that statement almost made me laugh. Everything you've done for me, Grandpa taught me how to work. Grandpa got me my first job. Grandpa co-signed my first business loan. What did you do? You showed up for Christmas with a gift card and acted like you were owed something for the inconvenience of my birth. My mother was openly sobbing now, pulling at my father's arm. Let's go, Bill. Let's just go. He wasn't done. He pointed a trembling finger at me. You'll regret this. When you're all alone in this big empty house, with all your money, you'll regret this. I've been alone my whole life, I said, and the truth of it surprised even me. I'm just not pretending anymore. That finally broke him. He turned, grabbed my mother, and they practically fled from my house. The front door slammed shut, and the silence that followed was heavier than any noise. The store-bought cake and the cheap beer were still sitting on my counter-pathetic monuments to a transaction that never happened. My hands were shaking just slightly. I balled them into fists until my knuckles were white. After a few minutes, I pulled out my phone and dialed the only number I ever called when the world went sideways. He picked up on the second ring. Yeah, Grandpa's voice was gravelly familiar. They came by, I said, no preamble needed. I figured, he grunted. Let me guess. The ballet thing. Yep. They asked for $20,000. A long, weary sigh on the other end of the line. Jesus H. Christ. What'd you tell him? I told them no. Then I told them I'd pay them back for all the money they spent on my childhood activities. A check for $0. There was a pause, and then I heard it, a dry, rasping chuckle. Well, you ain't wrong, but you could have found a nicer way to say it, kid. You got a sharp tongue when you want to use it. He called me an idiot, Grandpa. Yeah, well, he's been a damn fool your whole life, so I wouldn't take it personally. I could hear him shifting the phone. Here, your grandmother wants to talk. Arthur, honey, her voice was softer, laced with concern. Are you all right? I don't know, Grandma. Listen to me, she said, her tone firm. What you said was harsh. It was. But it was the truth. Your grandfather and I, we saw it all. They pawned you off on us every chance they got so they could go be kids. They did nothing for you, Arthur. Nothing. It doesn't give you a right to be cruel, but it damn sure gives you the right to say no. You don't owe them a thing. We talked for a few more minutes, her words, a soothing balm on a raw wound. When I hung up, the house felt a little less empty. They had my back. They always had. I walked over to the counter and picked up the cake. I didn't even open the box before I dropped it into the trash can. I poured the 6 beers down the sink one by one. I know what my grandparents think. And I know my parents will paint me as the villain of this story to anyone who will listen. But standing there in the quiet of my own home, the one I earned, the one I built, I couldn't shake one question that kept circling in my head. They were wrong, but was I right?
Story 3.
I was 10 when my mom married Lee. At the reception, my new 8-year-old brother Sam got to make a toast with a tiny glass of sparkling cider. Everyone oohed and awed as he slurred his way through a speech about gaining a new daddy. I spent the whole night in a corner nursing a Shirley Temple Invisible. Lee was the one who found me. He crouched down his tux, smelling like fancy soap and champagne. Not a party girl, huh? I shook my head. Me neither, he said with a wink. They're all a bit much, aren't they? That was Lee. In a family where I was an afterthought, he was the one who saw me. My mother, once she'd secured Lee's wealth, poured all her attention into Sam. He was her golden boy, the true heir to the life she'd always wanted. She'd coo over his report cards even when my grades were better. She'd brag about his Pee Wee football trophies while I was winning statewide art competitions she never bothered to attend. Sam was the sun, and Mom and I were just 2 sad little planets caught in his orbit. Lee's relatives weren't much better. His sister Carol always pinched Sam's cheeks and slipped him a $20 bill, her eyes sliding right over me. To them, I was just the baggage that came with their brother's new wife. But Lee was my person. He was the one who taught me how to invest using a stock market simulator. He was the one who read my college application essays and told me they were brilliant. When I got accepted to a university in London for graphic design, my mother's only comment was, "Isn't that a bit extravagant?" Lee overheard her. He walked into my room later that night and handed me an envelope. Inside was a cashier's check that covered my first year's tuition and housing. "Don't you ever let them make you feel small, Mila," he said, his voice firm. "You're my girl. Go take on the world." And I did. For 4 years, London was my escape. Lee and I had weekly video calls. He'd ask about my projects, my friends, my life. He sent care packages filled with American snacks and ridiculous souvenirs from his business trips. My contact with Mom and Sam dwindled to stilted holiday calls and the occasional guilt-tripping text from her. "Your brother misses you," one read, even though I knew Sam hadn't asked about me once. I was finishing up my final portfolio a week from graduation when my phone rang. It was Mom. My heart instantly seized up. She never called. "Mila." "You need to come home," she said. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "It's Lee. He's gone." I didn't hear the rest. "It was a heart attack," she said. Sudden, no warning. The world tilted on its axis, the colors of my apartment dimming to a dull, muted gray. The flight back was a 20-hour blur of recycled air and stale pretzels. I walked into the house I grew up in, and it felt like a stranger's home. It was eerily quiet. Mom and Sam were in the living room, dressed in black, looking more inconvenienced than grief-stricken. Lee's sister Carol was there too, perched on an armchair, her eyes red but sharp, watching everyone. Mila Mom said her tone the same as it was on the phone. It wasn't a greeting. It was an acknowledgement of a task completed. Sam just grunted from the couch, scrolling on his phone. He hadn't even looked up. The funeral was suffocating. I listened to people give hollow speeches about a man they barely knew. I stood there, a ghost in a black dress, while my mother accepted condolences with a practiced, somber grace. The only real thing in that whole miserable day was the tight anchoring grip of Lee's hand that I could no longer feel in mine. A week later, we were all summoned to the lawyer's office for the will reading. The room was tense, all dark wood and the smell of old paper. Me, Mom, Sam, and Aunt Carol sat on one side of a ridiculously large mahogany desk. The lawyer, a kind-faced man named Mr. Abernathy, cleared his throat and put on his glasses. He went through the smaller bequests, first donations to charities, a few items for friends. My stomach was in knots. I expected a token amount, something to help me get started after graduation, a safety net. To my wife Helen, Mr. Abernathy read, I leave the sum of $250,000 and the ownership of our primary residence free and clear. My mom's face tightened. I could see the furious calculation behind her eyes. It was a lot of money, but for a man of Lee's wealth, it was a pittance. To Samuel Vance, the lawyer, continued, not looking up, I also leave the sum of $250,000 to be placed in a trust until his 30th birthday. Sam scoffed. A trust? I'm 22. Mr. Abernathy ignored him. He took a deep breath, and his eyes found mine. And to my stepdaughter Mila, who I've always considered my own, I bequeath the remainder of my entire estate, including all properties, stocks, and liquid assets valued at approximately $7 million. The silence that followed was thick and violent. I couldn't breathe. 7 million. The number didn't even sound real. My gaze flickered to my mother. Her carefully constructed mask of grief had shattered, replaced by a pale, quivering fury. Sam's jaw was on the floor, his eyes wide with disbelief. That's impossible, my mother whispered, her voice a low hiss. There's been a mistake. There is no mistake, Helen, Mr. Abernathy said softly. He picked up another sheet of paper. Lee also included a codicil, which he insisted I read aloud. It was added 6 months ago. He cleared his throat again. The air crackled. This codicil, he read, is based on the results of a DNA test I privately conducted. The results confirm that Mr. Samuel Vance is not my biological son. The world stopped. Every sound in the room vanished. I stared at my mother, whose face had drained of all color. She looked like a cornered animal. Sam shot to his feet, his chair scraping violently against the floorboards. That's a lie, he shouted, pointing a trembling finger at the lawyer. He's lying. Mom, tell him he's lying. But she couldn't speak. She just sat there, frozen, as decades of secrets unraveled around her. Aunt Carol let out a small, sharp gasp, her eyes burning holes into my mother's head. And me, all I could feel was a profound, aching sadness for Lee. The man who had been my rock had been living with this crushing betrayal all alone. The ride home was a silent war. Back at the house, the fragile truth shattered. My mother and Sam cornered me in the living room, their faces twisted with a righteous rage that made my skin crawl. The shock had burned off, leaving behind pure, ugly entitlement. This is a sick joke, my mother started, her voice dangerously low. A sick, vengeful joke from a dying man. It's what he wanted, I said, my own voice barely a whisper. He was sick. You obviously manipulated him, Sam snarled, stepping forward. He looked like a stranger, his features warped by greed. That money belongs to this family. He times my family, I shot back, a spark of anger finally cutting through my grief. The only one who ever acted like it. My mother's eyes narrowed into slits. You listen to me, Mila. You will give us our share. Half. 25% for me, 25% for your brother? It is the only right and decent thing to do after everything we've done for you. I stared at her at the sheer audacity of it. The years of neglect, of being made to feel like a burden, flashed before my eyes. I thought of Lee, of his unwavering kindness, of the freedom he had so deliberately given me. No, I said. The word was quiet, but it landed in the room like a stone. Sam took another step closer, his fists clenched. Oh, you'll do it, he seethed, his voice dropping to a menacing growl. Or we'll see you in court. We'll drag your name and his through so much mud you'll drown in it. The threat hung in the air, thick and rancid. I looked at Sam, at the stranger wearing my brother's face, and felt nothing but a cold, hard certainty. The fear I thought would paralyze me simply wasn't there. Go ahead, I said, my voice steady. Sue me. Let's get a court to hear how Mom cheated on the man who gave you everything you've ever had. Let's publicize the DNA test. I'm sure Lee's business partners would love to hear all about it. My mother flinched as if I'd slapped her. Sam's face went from red to a mottled purple. You wouldn't, he spat. You've misjudged me my entire life, I said, looking from his furious face to my mother's pale one. Both of you. You thought I was weak because I was quiet. You thought I was a pushover because I didn't fight for your attention. You were wrong. I took a breath at the lawyer's office, Lee's quiet, strength, all of it solidifying into a plan. I will not give you the principal, not $1 of it. That was Lee's gift to me. But I'll make you an offer and it's the only one you're going to get. They stared their greed momentarily, overriding their rage. I will invest the entire inheritance, I explained the words, feeling like Lee himself was speaking through me. Aggressively, but smartly. The way he taught me. I will take 50% of the annual gains for myself. You two can split the other 50%. You'll have a significant income for the rest of your lives, but you will never touch the core amount. It remains mine as Lee intended. Sam let out a bark of a laugh. You want us to live on your table scraps, on times, interest times, that money is ours. It's not, I said flatly. We want our half now, Mila, my mother shrieked, her voice cracking. $2 million each. We're not begging you for an allowance. Then you get nothing, I said. That's enough. The voice cut through the room like shattered glass. We all turned. Aunt Carol was on her feet, her expression one of utter disgust. She had been a silent observer, a piece of furniture, but now she was a coiled viper. Her eyes were fixed on my mother. Helen, you will shut your mouth, she said, her voice low and venomous. You will sit down and you will be silent. Do you have any idea the humiliation you have brought upon this family, upon my brother's memory? My mother opened her mouth to protest, but Carol took a step forward. Don't. Don't you say one more word? You lived in his house, you spent his money, all while carrying on with God knows who and passing off another man's child as his. The fact that he didn't throw you out on the street with nothing but the clothes on your back is a testament to his kindness, a kindness you clearly don't deserve. She turned her fiery gaze on Sam. And you. You are a product of her deception. Lee gave you a name, a home, a life of privilege you had no right to. And this is how you repay him, by trying to steal from the one person he truly loved as his own. Sam shrank back, all his bluster gone, looking for the first time like the child he was. Carol's eyes finally met mine, and for the first time in my life, I saw a glimmer of respect, of kinship. Mila's offer is more than generous. It's a gift. You will accept it. Because if you pursue this in court, if you breathe one word of this to anyone, I will personally see to it that the entire family fortune is leveraged against you. We will countersue for fraud. We will make sure every friend you have, every person you know, is aware of exactly what you are. You will be ruined. Is that clear? My mother collapsed onto the sofa, a choked sob escaping her lips. Sam just stood there dumbfounded. The showdown was over. I hadn't even needed to win it. Lee's real family had. The next day, I was back in Mr. Abernathy's office. I told him everything, the demands, the threats, my offer, and Carol's intervention. He listened, patiently nodding. Carol called me this morning, he said when I finished. She told me the family would stand behind whatever decision you made. They want to honor Lee's wishes. I don't want to give them what they demanded, I said. But I don't want them to be destitute. Lee, he wouldn't have wanted that regardless of everything. There are better ways, Mr. Abernathy said, a small, knowing smile on his face. Ways that protect you and Lee's gift. He laid out the plan. It was simple, elegant, and ironclad. I wasn't just investing the money. I was creating an irrevocable trust. My mother and Sam would be the beneficiaries. I would be the trustee. The trust would be funded with $2 million from the estate. The capital would be invested, and the dividends, and only the dividends, would be paid out to them in monthly installments. They could never access the principal. They couldn't borrow against it. They couldn't sell their interest. They would receive a steady, comfortable income for the rest of their lives, enough to maintain their lifestyle. But they would never hold the wealth. They would be provided for, but they would never be in control. It was the perfect solution. It was a golden cage. A final posthumous lesson from Lee on the difference between being rich and being wealthy. I had Mr. Abernathy draw up the papers. He sent a copy to my mother's new lawyer, along with a polite but firm letter stating this was my final non-negotiable decision. They could accept the terms of the trust, or they could receive nothing at all, and we would see them in court with the full backing of the rest of Lee's family. They folded within 24 hours. I saw them one last time before I flew back to London. I went to the house to pack up my childhood bedroom and collect a few of Lee's things. A framed photo of us at my high school graduation. His favorite worn-in leather armchair for my new apartment, a box of his old finance. Books. Mom was in the kitchen staring out the window. She looked older, smaller. "The papers are signed," she said, not looking at me. "I know." "You'll be comfortable," I added. "You won't have to worry about money." She finally turned her eyes hollow. "It was never about the money, Mila. It was about respect. He disrespected me." I almost laughed. The cognitive dissonance was breathtaking. He gave you a life you could only dream of, and you repaid him with betrayal. The only disrespect I see is yours. I left her standing there and went to find Sam. He was in his room, surrounded by video games and expensive clothes. He didn't look up when I came in. "Enjoy the allowance," I said. He just grunted. That was it. No tearful goodbyes. No final dramatic confrontation. Just the quiet, pathetic fizzle of a family that had been broken for years. On the plane back to London, I watched the American coastline disappear beneath the clouds. I held a check in my bag for an amount that still didn't feel real, but the weight I felt lifting off my shoulders was far more valuable. I was sad for the family I never had, and I was heartbroken for Lee's lonely burden. But for the first time, I felt completely, utterly free. Lee hadn't just left me his money. He had left me his legacy, a life of my own, making far away from the small people who had tried to keep me in the shadows. He told me to go take on the world. And now I finally could.
Story 4.
My girlfriend Chloe can handle chopsticks better than I can. I'm not kidding. She's got this elegant, precise way of plucking a single grain of rice from her bowl, a skill that took me 20 years to master, and she picked up in about 20 minutes. My mom adores her for it. More than that, she adores her for trying. Chloe, a blonde from Ohio with a laugh that can fill a stadium, will try anything. Stinky tofu. It's an experience, she'll say, pinching her nose. Durian. You only live once. My dad's bafflingly bitter herbal teas. She sips them with a straight face and says, "It tastes very healthy, mister." Chen. My brother David's fiancée Ashley is also white. That's where the similarities end. The first time my parents met her, Mom cooked for 2 days straight. She made a feast glistening Peking duck, heaps of longevity noodles, steamed fish, delicate with ginger, and scallion baskets of xiaolong bao. Ashley sat at the table, a polite, frozen smile on her face, and moved a single piece of broccoli around her plate for an hour. "I have a sensitive stomach," she explained, taking a sip of water. My mom's face fell, but she recovered quickly. "Oh, of course, Sebastian, run to the pantry, get the saltine crackers." Ashley ate 3 saltine crackers for dinner. That was the beginning. It got worse. A few months later, it was Lunar New Year. Our house was a sea of red and gold. The air was thick with the smell of incense and pan-fried dumplings. My parents were handing out red envelopes, the crisp bills inside, symbolizing good fortune. When my mom approached Ashley with a smile, holding out the decorated paper, Ashley held up a hand. "Oh, that's so sweet, but we don't really do that." My mom paused, confused. It is for good luck for the new year. Right, but it's February, Ashley said with a little laugh, as if explaining something to a child. New Year's was a month ago. We don't really celebrate, you know, the fake one. The word hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Asterisk. Fake. Asterisk. My dad, who rarely speaks, put his teacup down with a sharp clink. David, my brother, just wrapped an arm around Ashley's shoulder. Babe, it's just a tradition. And it's a lovely one, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. For you guys. She never took the envelope. But the wedding planning? That was the main event. That's when Ashley went from passive dismissal to active demolition. We were all at my parents' house for a Sunday lunch, one where Ashley had brought her own Tupperware containing a garden salad when she and David announced they'd booked the venue. It's a beautiful country club, Ashley beamed, showing us pictures on her phone of rolling green hills and a white pillared building. So classic. So American. Very nice, my mom said, her voice tight. We can have the tea ceremony in the garden. Ashley's smile didn't waver, but her eyes went cold. Oh, we won't be doing a tea ceremony. No tea ceremony, my dad asked, looking up from his newspaper. It was the first time he'd ever shown interest in wedding details. No, Ashley said firmly. It's not us. We're not having any of that. Or the red dresses, or the dragons, or anything. We want a simple, elegant American wedding. She said American like it was a shield. Like she was building a wall to keep us out. My brother just sat there nodding. Yeah, Mom. We want to keep things simple. Simple, my mom repeated the word, sounding like a curse. Her eyes were glistening. Erasing us is simple. Nobody is erasing anyone, David snapped, his voice defensive. It's times our times wedding, isn't it? We get to choose. The rest of the lunch was murderously quiet. I watched Ashley pick at her lettuce completely unfazed while my mother stared at a spot on the wall, her food untouched. Later that week, I got the call I was expecting. It was my mom, her voice choked with tears. She wants us to be invisible, Sebastian. She is ashamed of us. Ma, that's not true. It is, she cried. No traditions, no family. She wants your father to wear a tuxedo, not his formal tunic. She wants to pretend we do not exist. Your father and I, we are not going. What, Mom? You can't be serious. We will not sit in the back and pretend we are strangers at our own son's wedding, she said, her voice gaining a steely edge. We will not be erased. If she does not want a Chinese family, then she will not have one. We are done. I felt a spike of panic. As much as Ashley infuriated me, this was my brother. A complete family implosion was not the answer. I drove over to their house that night. I found them in the living room, my dad staring silently into the fireplace, my mom dabbing her eyes with a tissue. I sat down on the ottoman in front of them. Don't skip the wedding, I said quietly. She does not want us there, my father said, his voice a low rumble. She wants you there, I argued, though the words tasted like lies. She just has a different vision for her wedding, and it's their day. It's not about us. It's about David and Ashley. We have to let them have the wedding they want, even if we don't understand it. I talked for an hour. I reasoned. I pleaded. I reminded them that David was their son, that cutting him off would be a wound that would never heal. I told them that being the bigger person meant showing up, smiling, and supporting him no matter what. Finally, my mom let out a long, shuddering sigh. Okay, she whispered, looking at my dad. He gave a single, reluctant nod. We will go. Relief washed over me, so potent it made me dizzy. I had stopped the bomb from going off. I had kept the peace. I left their house feeling like a UN negotiator who just brokered a ceasefire. Driving home, my phone buzzed. It was a text from David. Asterisk. Thanks for talking them down. Huge help. Asterisk. I smiled, feeling a small sense of victory. Then a second text came through. Asterisk. Hey, since you're on a roll, Mom's birthday is next week. We should do a family dinner. There's something important Ashley and I need to discuss with them about the wedding costs. Asterisk. The phone rang with an aggression I could feel through the floorboards. I saw David's name and picked it up with a sigh. Hey. What did you do? He roared, the sound distorted by his fury. In the background, I could hear a high-pitched keening shriek that I recognized as Ashley. What are you talking about? I asked, already knowing. The jewelry Mom just called? She said they're not getting it. What the hell did you say to them? I said what you didn't have the spine to say, David. That it's insane to give a $50 000 cultural gift to someone who spits on our culture. A shriek from the background became clearer. It was Ashley screaming at David. Tell him he's a jealous, vindictive snake. Tell him. You're a jealous snake, man, David echoed, his voice cracking. You couldn't stand to see me get something you didn't have. You have to ruin everything. Ruin what? Your cash grab. I shot back, my own anger flaring. She wants an American wedding, remember? The American tradition is a toaster. I'll buy you a nice one. It'll even have a bagel setting. This isn't a joke, he screamed. That was supposed to help with our down payment. We were counting on that. And there it was. The ugly, bald truth. It was never about tradition. It was a transaction. Oh, so you were just going to sell it? I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. Wow. That's even worse. Fix it, Sebastian, he snarled, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Ashley was sobbing loudly, now a theatrical gulping sound. Call them back. Tell them you were wrong. Tell them you were emotional and stupid, and you take it all back. Convince them to buy the jewelry. No. The line went silent for a beat. I could hear him breathing ragged and fast. No, he repeated, his voice full of disbelief. No, David. I'm not doing that. Then you're not coming, he said, the words cold and final. You, Mom, Dad, Chloe. None of you. If the jewelry isn't at my apartment in a little red box by next Friday, you are all uninvited from my wedding. You are not my family anymore. He hung up. I stood there, phone in my hand, the dial tone buzzing in my ear. The silence in my apartment felt heavy, suffocating. He'd actually done it. He'd put a price tag on his family, and it was $50,000. The official uninvitation arrived 2 days later. It wasn't a call or a text. It was an email sent from Ashley's pristine corporate-looking account. Asterisk. Subject. An update regarding our wedding. Asterisk. David and Sebastian. The opening was a clear indicator of who was in charge. My brother was now a secondary character in his own life. Asterisk. Due to recent and unfortunate family disagreements that we have been unable to resolve, we have made the difficult decision to proceed with a more intimate wedding ceremony. Consequently, we will have to rescind the invitations for Sebastian Chen, Chloe Miller, and Mr. and Mrs. Chen. We wish you all the best. Asterisk. Asterisk. Sincerely, asterisk. Asterisk. Ashley and David. Asterisk. It was the most brutally polite go to hell I'd ever read. I forwarded it to my parents without comment. My mom called me 30 seconds later. Good, she said, her voice sharp and clear, devoid of the tears I'd expected. Good. The trash has taken itself out. Now we do not have to sit there and watch her pretend she likes us. She has made our lives simpler. Ma. No, I am serious, Sebastian. Your father and I are relieved. A person who will disown her family over jewelry is not a person we want our son to marry. But he has made his choice. The matter is finished. She was trying to be strong, but I could hear the tremor beneath the steel. This wasn't just losing a daughter-in-law they never wanted. It was losing their firstborn son. My father in the background said nothing at all. His silence was always worse than her anger. Chloe found me that night staring at the email on my laptop screen, reading the words over and over. She wrapped her arms around my neck from behind and rested her chin on my shoulder. "You're wondering if you should have just kept your mouth shut," she said softly. I nodded, unable to speak. The guilt was a physical weight in my chest. I had pulled the pin on the grenade. I had started the war. Maybe if I had just let it go, let them give her the jewelry, my parents would still have their son. "Look at me," she said. She came around the chair and knelt in front of me, taking my hands. Her reaction proved you were right. This wasn't about you meddling. This was about you holding up a mirror and her not liking the greedy, entitled person she saw. You didn't break your family, Sebastian. She did. And David let her. The wedding day came a month later. It was a perfect sunny Saturday in June. My parents' house was quiet. To combat the oppressive silence, my mom decided to wage war on her garden. She was outside from dawn until dusk, viciously pulling weeds, attacking overgrown bushes with a pair of shears. My dad locked himself in his study, ostensibly to do paperwork, but I knew he was just staring at the walls. I couldn't stay there. Chloe and I went for a drive, ending up at the beach. We walked along the shore, the waves crashing in a steady rhythm, washing away the silence. "Do you think he's happy?" I asked, watching a wave pull back from the sand. "Right now, probably," Chloe said, squeezing my hand. "He has a beautiful bride in a white dress at a country club. He has the American wedding. He thinks he won." "And what did we win?" I asked, the bitterness creeping back in. "Us," she said simply. "Look." She pointed back toward the boardwalk. My parents were there. My mom must have called them. She was holding a small paper bag, and my dad was holding 2 cups of his awful herbal tea. They walked slowly across the sand toward us. My mom handed me the bag. Inside were 4 perfect warm egg tarts from their favorite bakery. Her peace offering. We sat there, the 4 of us, on the sand. The setting sun painted the sky in streaks of orange and purple. We ate the flaky tarts, and my dad made Chloe laugh by describing how my mom had nearly decapitated her prized rose bushes that morning. For the first time all day, my mom smiled, a real, genuine smile. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from a social media app. A cousin had just posted a photo from the wedding. I felt a morbid curiosity pull at me. Against my better judgment, I opened it. There they were. David and Ashley. He was in a standard black tux. She was in a massive white dress, her smile wide and triumphant. They were standing under a flower-covered archway surrounded by her family. Her parents, her siblings, her cousins. All smiling, all blonde, all perfectly American. There wasn't a single Asian face in the photo. It was exactly what she wanted. We had been completely and totally erased. I looked at the picture at my brother's smiling face, and I didn't feel the sting I expected. I didn't feel anger or jealousy. I just felt a quiet, profound sadness. He had his simple, elegant American wedding. And here on the beach, with the taste of egg tart and bitter tea on my tongue, watching the woman I loved laugh with my parents, I had everything else. And I knew who had gotten the better deal.
Story 5.
5 years. We'd been together for 5 years, and 3 of them were spent staring at each other through a screen. I was 23, she was 25, and we were both drowning in the final brutal stretch of our college programs. The 800 miles between us felt more like 8000. Every conversation was clipped, strained. We were running on fumes, and the engine of our relationship was sputtering. The fight that broke everything started over something so stupid it still makes my head spin. My brother had posted a picture from his birthday dinner. Just a group shot. Me, him, my parents, and his new girlfriend, Sarah. A few hours later, my phone buzzed. It was her. My fiancée. You have a crush on her, don't you? The text was so out of left field I thought it was a joke. Who, Sarah? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. The way you're standing next to her in that picture? You're practically on top of her. I pulled up the photo. I was standing next to my brother. Sarah was on his other side. There was a solid 3 feet of air between us. Are you looking at the same picture I am? I'm nowhere near her. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared for a full minute. It's the way you look at her. I can see it. You think she's prettier than me. This was her new thing. Jealousy weaponized. Any woman I came into contact with, a classmate, a cashier, my own damn brother's girlfriend, was suddenly a threat. It was exhausting. This is insane, I typed back, my thumbs jabbing the screen. She's my brother's girlfriend. I barely know her. You're inventing things to be angry about. Her call came instantly. I answered and her voice was already tight with tears. So I'm crazy now, is that it? You cheat on me in your head, and then you call me crazy for noticing. Cheat on you in my head, I practically yelled, dropping my textbook on the floor. I'm studying 20 hours a day for my finals. I don't have time to eat, let alone have an imaginary affair with my brother's girlfriend. You always do this. You turn it around on me. We went in circles for an hour. Her accusations got wilder. My denials got louder. Every word was a shovel, digging the trench between us a little deeper. I could feel a migraine starting behind my eyes. I had a thermodynamics exam in less than a week that I was already on track to fail. I couldn't do this. I couldn't do times as times right now. Stop, I said, cutting her off mid-sentence. The word hung in the dead air. What, she sniffled. We need to stop. This isn't helping. I can't focus. You can't focus. We're just tearing each other apart before the most important exams of our lives. I took a deep breath. Let's take a break. You're breaking up with me, her voice cracked, panicked. No. Not breaking up. A break. A pause. 1 month. No contact. We just focus completely on school. We get through our finals and then we talk. When we're not this stressed out, when we can actually think straight, silence. I could hear her breathing shaky and uncertain. 1 month, she finally whispered. Okay. The 30 days were hell, but a productive hell. I lived in the library. I mainlined coffee and Adderall. I passed my exams. The silence from her was a constant low-level hum of anxiety in the back of my mind, but it was better than the screaming matches. I told myself I was doing the right thing, giving us space to heal, to reset. The day after my last final, I sat staring at my phone, my thumb hovering over her name. Before I could decide what to say, a message from her popped up. Hey, are you done with finals? My heart hammered against my ribs. Yeah. Just finished my last one this morning. You? Finished yesterday. I miss you. A wave of relief washed over me. Maybe it had worked. Maybe the space was what we needed. I miss you too. More than you know. We talked for hours that night. It felt normal. We avoided the big subjects, just catching up, laughing about stupid things. It felt like us again. For the first time in months, I let myself feel hopeful. I had spent over $17,000 on this relationship. Over the years, flights, gifts, dinners, 1,000 little things. I'd even had my grandmother's engagement ring professionally restored and customized for her a family heirloom that meant the world to me. I was all in. I just needed her to be too. A week later, we were on a video call. She was telling me about a difficult professor when her expression shifted. She started picking at a loose thread on her sweater, avoiding the camera. I have to tell you something, she said, her voice small. My stomach tightened. Okay. When we were going through that rough patch, before the break, I was really lonely and upset. I started talking to someone. An online friend. His name is Strat. He's in a few of the gaming communities I'm in. She looked up her eyes, pleading for understanding. He was just easy to talk to. He listened. And he helped me out. Helped you out how I asked my voice flat? Financially. Just a little. I was short on my textbook money and he sent me a couple $100. I was going to pay him back. A couple $100. From some random guy online, a guy she'd never mentioned. A cold knot formed in my gut, but I pushed it down. We were struggling. I was struggling. Maybe I hadn't been there for her enough. Okay, I said slowly. I don't love that, but I get it. You were stressed. We weren't talking. I was trying to be the bigger person. I was trying to make this work. Thank you for understanding, she said, relief flooding her face. It meant a lot that he was there for me. I nodded, forcing a smile I didn't feel. As long as it's over, we're back now. That's all that matters. She held my gaze, but something was off. The relief in her eyes was being replaced by a shadow of guilt. She bit her lip, then took a shaky breath. It didn't stop there, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Liam, there's more. My blood ran cold. The forced smile fell from my face. What do you mean there's more? She looked down at her hands, refusing to meet my eyes on the screen. During the month we were on our break, she trailed off, swallowing hard. Things escalated. Escalated, how I demanded, my voice rising. What did you do? She finally looked up, her eyes swimming with tears that didn't look real. They looked like props. Her lips parted, and the words she spoke shattered the entire world around me. I sent him pictures of myself, Liam. My mind went blank. Pictures. What kind of pictures? Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion, like she was reading a weather report. Nudes. The video feed froze for a second, but her face was still there, a perfect mask of practiced sorrow. My world tilted. The floor felt like it was dropping out from under me. You sent nudes, I repeated, the words tasting like ash. To Strat. The guy who sent you textbook money. Yes. No hesitation. Just a flat statement of fact. A laugh sharp and ugly tore out of my throat. Of course. Of course you did. And all that shit you gave me about Sarah, about my brother's girlfriend, that was all just projection, wasn't it? You were already talking to this guy, so you had to invent a reason to believe I was doing the same thing. She flinched. A direct hit. It wasn't like that. Don't lie to me, I snarled, leaning into my laptop camera. The person staring back at her wasn't her fiancé anymore. I didn't recognize him. Don't you dare lie to me now. You picked a fight to push me away. You agreed to that 1-month break so you could have a free pass to test drive someone new. Her fake tears dried up instantly, replaced by a cold defensiveness. I was lonely. You weren't there for me. Strat was. He listened to me. He actually cared about what I was going through. I was drowning in my final semester of engineering, the same way you were in nursing. We were supposed to be getting through it together. I slammed my hand on my desk, the webcam rattling. Instead, you were getting validation from some random dude on the internet. You let him pay your bills, and then you sent him photos of your body. My body. The one you were supposed to be marrying. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. I waited for an apology. For a sob. For anything that sounded like remorse. I got nothing. Do you regret it? I finally asked, my voice dangerously quiet. She looked away, tucking a piece of hair behind her ear as if we were discussing the weather. No. The word hit me harder than a punch. No. I don't regret it, she said, her voice gaining a chilling strength. She finally met my gaze on the screen. Honestly, Liam, I was torn. I had real feelings for him. I almost used the money he sent me to buy a plane ticket to go see him. My vision swam. She hadn't just cheated. She had been actively planning to leave. She had weighed 5 years of my life, of my love, of my support, against a few weeks of online chatter with a stranger. And I had almost lost. He told me to choose, she continued, as if she were the hero of this story. He said he wouldn't be the other man. So I had to make a decision. And I chose you. I thought you'd be happy. Happy. She thought I'd be times happy, times to know I was plan A only because plan B had a conscience. She was presenting her decision to stay with me as a gift. A favor. The ring, I said, the words catching in my throat. My grandmother's ring. The one I had restored for you. All the money, the flights, the years. That was all just a placeholder while you shopped around. That's not fair. Fair, I exploded. You want to talk about fair? I have spent over $17,000 keeping this relationship afloat while you were taking money from another man and sending him naked pictures of yourself. I was your backup plan, your safe bet, and you have the audacity to sit there and tell me you don't regret a single second of it. I stood up, backing away from the screen, needing to put distance between us, even if it was only digital. We're done, I said. The words felt foreign, but right. The engagement is over. It's done. Liam, wait. I didn't wait. I slammed my laptop shut. The silence in my apartment was absolute. For 5 years, every quiet moment had been filled with thoughts of her. Now, there was just a gaping, echoing void. 2 days later, the phone calls started. Then the texts. A fire hose of apologies and excuses. Asterisk, I made a mistake. I was confused. I was just scared. I love you. It was you I chose. It's always been you. Asterisk. The words she should have said from the start now deployed like a last-ditch weapon system when she realized the consequences were real. I let her spin for a full day before I finally answered. I was wrong, she sobbed into the phone. I was so wrong. Please, Liam. 5 years. Don't throw it all away. I'll do anything. My heart, stupid and conditioned, felt a flicker of something. But my brain was cold stone. I had spent the last 48 hours talking to my brother, my parents, anyone who would listen. They all saw what I was too close to see, a pattern of manipulation I had mistaken for love. Anything I asked, my voice flat. Yes, anything. I promise. Okay. One condition. You delete and block every single male friend you have on all your social media and in your phone. Strat first, then all the rest. The ones you game with, the ones from high school, all of them. From now on, your only male friends are my friends and my family. That's the deal. It was an impossible, controlling demand. I knew it. But I wasn't trying to fix the relationship. I was testing the wreckage. I wanted to see if she understood what she had broken. Trust. Silence. Not the answer of, okay, done. Not, I'm deleting them right now, just dead air. Well, what about Mark? She finally stammered. He's practically my brother. And what about David? He's gay. And there it was. The tell. The final damning piece of evidence. Even now, with everything on the line, she was hedging, negotiating, protecting her network. She wasn't willing to give up her audience. I laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was the sound of a lock breaking. You still don't get it, I said. It was never about them. It was about you. It was about proving you could be trusted again. And you can't. You failed. That's not fair. You're being unreasonable. I'm being done, I corrected her. I called your mom. She's getting the ring from your apartment and mailing it back to me. It's a family heirloom, and you are no longer family. A choked gasp on the other end. I hope it was worth it, I said, and for the first time in 5 years I felt the immense weight of our relationship lift off my shoulders. It wasn't love. It was a burden. A nightmare I'd finally woken up from. Goodbye. I hung up the phone before she could say another word, and then I blocked her number. I stared out my window, the sky clearer than it had been in years. I had just lost my fiancé, but I had saved myself from a wife. And that felt like a win.
Story 6.
6 years. That's how long it took to scrape the memory of that day off the inside of my skull. For 6 years, I'd been the one who got left at the altar. It was a brand seared onto my identity in my hometown. Mark, my high school sweetheart, had left me a note in the church vestibule. A 3-sentence masterpiece of cowardice that boiled down to times, I'm sorry, I'm in love with someone else, and she's pregnant. Asterisk. My family was my lifeboat. My parents, my aunt, and especially my younger sister, Clara. She was the one who held my hand while I dry heaved into a toilet, my $5,000 wedding dress pooled around my knees. She was the one who boxed up every picture of Mark and threw them into a bonfire in our backyard. She helped me rebuild. Now it was her turn. And she was doing it right. Her fiancé Liam was a solid guy. A genuinely good man who looked at her like she'd hung the moon. The only problem was money. They were young, renting a tiny apartment, and trying to build a life on 2 entry-level salaries. A big wedding was a fantasy, which is how we ended up in a bridal boutique that smelled like champagne and anxiety. Clara stood in front of a 3-way mirror, a vision in layers of silk and lace. It was the Times dress. The one she'd bookmarked 100 times, the one pinned to the top of her secret Pinterest board. It had delicate hand-stitched flowers cascading down the bodice and a train that seemed to go on for miles. It was perfect. It was also $7,000. I watched her face crumble as she looked at the price tag. The light in her eyes just went out. Well, she whispered, her voice cracking. It was fun to pretend. She started to fumble with the zipper. Wait, I said, stepping forward. I saw my own ghost in that mirror, a younger me giddy with a hope that was about to be obliterated. I had my own dream dress now sealed in a vacuum bag in my attic like a piece of toxic evidence. Maybe I could turn that poison into medicine for her. What do you mean wait? Clara asked, her eyes already welling up. Helen, there's no way. Consider it my wedding gift, I said, my voice firmer than I expected. The whole thing. I'll buy it for you. The boutique fell silent. Clara froze. Then her face completely dissolved into tears. Not the sad, defeated tears from a moment ago, but a tidal wave of pure, unadulterated joy. She threw her arms around me, lace and tulle and all. Are you serious? She sobbed into my shoulder. Helen, you can't. It's too much. I can, I said, hugging her tight. And I want to. You deserve to feel like a princess. No compromises. It was the best money I'd ever spent. Mom cried. The sales associate cried. The whole thing was a made-for-TV movie moment. For the next few weeks, I was the family hero. My generosity was the main topic of conversation. It felt good. It felt like I was finally closing a painful chapter and using my hard-earned success to create a beautiful new one for my sister. The deposit was paid. The dress was ordered. Everything was perfect. Until last night's family dinner. It was a casual Sunday thing at my parents' house. Me, Mom, Dad, Clara, and Liam, and my Aunt Carol. The air was thick with wedding talk, centerpieces, cake flavors, seating charts. I was sipping my wine, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the alcohol. I was genuinely happy for her. Dad was grilling Liam about pre-wedding jitters. You getting cold feet yet, son? He asked, winking. Liam laughed, grabbing Clara's hand. Not a chance. Just nervous about tripping over my own feet when I see her walking down the aisle. It was sweet. Everyone smiled. Clara, a little flushed from her second glass of wine, let out a loud theatrical laugh. Yeah, well, just make sure you actually show up, she said, her voice glib. A weird little knot tightened in my stomach. She wasn't done. She waved her fork in the air, a smirk playing on her lips. Let's just hope he won't run away with a pregnant mistress or something. The words hit the air and hung there thick and toxic. My fork clattered against my plate. The sound was like a gunshot in the sudden silence. She hadn't just made a joke. She had recited almost word for word the single most traumatic event of my life. The line I had screamed at her through hysterical tears 6 years ago. Asterisk. He left me for his pregnant mistress, Clara. Asterisk. My Aunt Carol broke the spell. She let out a sharp barking laugh. Oh, Clara, that's just awful, she cackled, slapping the table. The warmth I'd felt moments before vanished, replaced by a glacial cold that started in my chest and spread through my limbs. The lively dining room, the smell of roast chicken, the faces of my family, it all faded into a dull humming background. All I could see was Mark's handwriting on that crumpled piece of paper. All I could feel was the suffocating weight of that veil. I looked up. Clara was still smiling a little nervously now, watching me, waiting for me to laugh along, waiting for me to validate her joke. My own sister. The one I just handed a $7,000 dream to, and she was using my nightmare as a punchline for a cheap laugh. My mother's face was a mask of strained pleasantry. Clara, don't be morbid, she chided gently. My father cleared his throat. Helen, honey, she was just kidding around. But I wasn't listening. The blood was pounding in my ears, a furious drumbeat of betrayal. I stared across the table right into my sister's eyes. The smirk was gone, replaced by a flicker of dawning horror as she finally registered the look on my face. She knew what she'd done. And in that one shattering moment, something inside me finally broke. My voice was quiet, but it sliced through the room. What did you just say? Clara's face went white. The smirk was gone, replaced by a panicked, flickering guilt. Helen, It was just a joke. A stupid joke. A joke, I repeated, the word tasting like poison. I pushed my chair back, the legs screeching against the hardwood floor. Everyone flinched. You think that's a joke? Helen, honey, calm down, my father started, raising his hands in a placating gesture. She didn't mean it. I didn't even look at him. My eyes were locked on my sister. You stood there in that boutique and you cried in my arms. You said I was the most generous person you knew. Was that a joke too? Were you laughing at me then, thinking about how you could use the story of my life's biggest humiliation for a cheap laugh later? Tears started to stream down Clara's face. They weren't the tears of joy from the bridal shop. These were the panicked, selfish tears of someone who'd just been caught. No, of course not. I'm so sorry. I wasn't thinking. That's the problem, Clara. You never think I was on my feet now, my whole body vibrating with a rage I hadn't felt in 6 years. It was the rage I should have felt at Mark, but had instead turned inward. Now it had a target. You took the single most painful day of my life, a day you supposedly helped me survive, and you served it up like an appetizer. You and Aunt Carol cackling like hyenas. Aunt Carol looked down at her plate, suddenly fascinated by her mashed potatoes. That is enough, my mother said, her voice sharp. You are making a scene, Helen. Apologize to your aunt. I laughed. A raw, ugly sound that had no humor in it. Apologize? Are you kidding me? I grabbed my purse from the floor and my keys from the counter. The metallic jingle was the only sound in the dead silent room. Clara stood up, her hands outstretched. Helen, please don't go. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. Please. I walked to the door, my back to all of them. I could feel their eyes on me, could feel the weight of their collective judgment. They wanted me to be the bigger person. To swallow the pain, smooth things over, and let Clara have her perfect wedding. Just like they wanted me to get over Mark and stop being the one who got left at the altar. I paused, with my hand on the doorknob, and turned my head just enough to look at my sister. Her face was a mess of tears and makeup, her mouth trembling. She looked pathetic. And for the first time, I felt nothing. No pity, no empathy. Just a cold, hard finality. You can think about how sorry you are while you're shopping for a dress you can actually afford, I said, my voice flat and empty. Because as of right now, you are getting $0 from me. I didn't wait for a reaction. I walked out and pulled the door shut behind me, the click of the latch sounding like a gavel. I made it halfway to my car before the front door flew open again. Helen, it was my dad, his voice booming into the quiet suburban street. Get back here. This is absurd. I ignored him, fumbling with my keys, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't get the key into the lock. He caught up to me just as I got the door open, his hand landing on the roof of the car with a heavy thud. You're going to walk out on your family over a bad joke, he demanded, his face ruddy with anger. A bad joke. I finally got the car door open and slid inside, but he held it so I couldn't close it. Dad, she took a knife and twisted it into the deepest wound I have. And you're all defending her. Nobody's defending her. We're trying to keep the peace. She's in there sobbing, completely hysterical. Good, I said, jamming the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life. Don't be so cruel, he snapped. She's your sister. She's devastated about the dress. All she can talk about is how she's going to lose the dress. Is that what you want? To ruin her wedding? His words hit me harder than Clara's joke. It wasn't about my pain. It wasn't about the betrayal. It was about the dress. About the wedding. About preserving the perfect family fantasy. I was just a line item, a check that was suddenly refusing to be cashed. I looked at him, my father, the man who was supposed to protect me. She's the one who was cruel. She took my generosity and threw it back in my face. This isn't about the money anymore, Dad. It's about respect. A respect she obviously doesn't have for me. That's ridiculous. It's dark humor. It's how kids these days talk. I'm not a kid. And that wasn't humor. It was mockery, I said, my voice hardening into something I barely recognized. You taught me to stand up for myself. This is me standing up for myself. I will not pay to have my own trauma used as a punchline in my own family. He sighed a long, weary sound of parental disappointment. Helen, for God's sake, just forgive her. Be the bigger person and pay for the dress. Don't let one stupid comment destroy your relationship with your sister. Our relationship is already destroyed, I said. She destroyed it tonight. Not me. I put the car in reverse. He finally took his hand off the door. I looked at him one last time, standing there under the porch light, his face a mixture of anger and disbelief. He didn't get it. He never would. Tell Clara, I said, my voice as cold as the night air, that forgiveness is free. But a dream wedding dress cost $7,000. I didn't look back as I pulled out of the driveway. My phone was already buzzing in my purse. A text from Clara. Then another from my mom. Then a call. I silenced it, tossing it onto the passenger seat. They could leave all the messages they wanted. Let them call me harsh. Let them call me cruel. For the first time in 6 years, I wasn't the victim in my own story. And that felt better than any dress money could buy.
Story 7.
My husband's family isn't complicated. They're just a collection of walking, talking, trauma responses held together by guilt and a misplaced sense of duty. At the center of this hurricane of dysfunction is his sister, Chloe. And my first real introduction to the specific brand of her insanity involved my underwear. We'd been dating for about 6 months. I was staying over at his mom's place where Chloe, then in her early 20s, was also living. I woke up, went to get dressed, and realized a very specific lacy pair of panties was missing from my overnight bag. I tore that bag apart. Nothing. I mentioned it to my husband Mark, who just got this grim familiar look on his face. Later that day, his mom Brenda was doing laundry. She pulled Mark aside, holding up the missing panties with a pair of kitchen tongs like they were radioactive. These are Alice's right. I found them in Chloe's dirty clothes hamper. Chloe just shrugged when confronted. I thought they were cute. I was going to borrow them. She didn't see a single thing wrong with stealing used underwear from her brother's new girlfriend. That was my welcome to the family moment. That was Chloe. She was the golden child of a messy divorce. Brenda, her mom, carried a backpack full of guilt so heavy it stooped her shoulders. She was determined that Chloe would never suffer, which ironically guaranteed she'd do nothing but cause suffering for everyone else. While Mark and his brother worked part-time jobs through high school, Chloe got an allowance. When they had to buy their own beater cars, Brenda co-signed a loan for a brand new Jetta for Chloe. The enabling hit a fever pitch in Chloe's 20s. Brenda was working 2 jobs, barely making her mortgage payments, while Chloe lived in her spare bedroom for $100 a month. She'd spend her days working on her portfolio, scrolling Instagram, and her nights going out with friends, all funded by a waitressing job she conveniently never had enough money from to, pay actual rent. Then the pandemic hit. Brenda, being older and with a pre-existing condition, was terrified. She needed someone to run errands to be her quarantine buddy. Chloe was right there living in her house. But suddenly a dream job in another city materialized. Brenda, bless her guilt-ridden heart, not only gave Chloe her blessing, but also gave her the down payment for a new car and used her connections to get Chloe the interview. 2 weeks after she got the car and the job offer, Chloe was gone. She left her mom completely alone in the middle of a global lockdown. Mark was incandescent with rage. She used her Alice. She took everything mom could give and then abandoned her when it got inconvenient. Of course, the dream job didn't last. Neither did the boyfriend she moved in with. 6 months later, we get the call. Chloe's been dumped and kicked out. She had nowhere to go. Brenda, of course, told her to come home. So Mark and I spent a full Saturday driving a U-Haul 5 hours each way to move her and all her crap back into Brenda's house. No thank you, no gas money, just a constant stream of complaints about how her ex was a psycho. This became the pattern. Chloe would get a boyfriend, move in with him, get dumped and evicted, and the family would swoop in to rescue her. Each time she was the victim. Each time she needed money, a place to stay, a shoulder to cry on. And each time, Brenda would provide it all, whispering, "She's just had it so hard." The last time this happened about a year ago, she needed a deposit for a new apartment. She'd been staying with Brenda for months, driving her mother up the wall, but now she'd found the perfect Times place. The only problem: she was short. $700 for the first month's rent and security deposit. She called Mark first, fake sobbing into the phone. Mark, who had long since run out of patience, told her no. Flat out. Chloe, you work full-time. Where is your money? Her excuses were a blur of car trouble and unexpected vet bills, and you know how expensive groceries are. It was all bullshit. We'd seen her Instagram stories, new tattoos, sushi dinners, weekend trips to the coast. So she called me next. That was her strategy. Pit us against each other. She laid it on thick, her voice trembling. Alice, I know I haven't been the best sister, but I'm really trying to get my life together this time. If I can't get this deposit, I'm going to be homeless. I'll lose my job. Please. I'll pay you back with my very next paycheck. I swear on my life. Mark was standing right there, shaking his head, mouthing, "Don't do it." But I looked at him, and I looked at the phone, and I thought about Brenda, who would end up paying for it anyway if I didn't. I caved. It felt like the lesser of two evils, a way to buy some peace for the family. I sent her the $700. I'll pay you back next Friday, she texted, complete with a dozen prayer hands emojis. Next Friday came and went. A month went by. I'd see her post about a new $200 purse. Then a concert. Then a bottomless mimosa brunch. I sent a gentle text. Hey Chloe, hope you're settling in well. Just wanted to check in about that $700 when you have a chance. Radio silence. 2 months later, Brenda needed a place to stay for a few weeks while her floors were being redone. Her first call was to Chloe. It was the least she could do right. The prodigal daughter finally had a chance to repay a sliver of the debt she owed her mother. Chloe agreed, but her tone was that of a martyr bestowing a great favor. Brenda had been there for 3 days. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was Mark calling from work. I could tell from the silence on the other end when I answered that something was wrong. His breathing was tight controlled. Alice, he said, and his voice was cold steel. You are not going to believe the phone call I just got from my sister. What now? I sighed, bracing myself. Did her landlord kick her out for having Mom there? Worse, he said, his voice dropping to a low, furious whisper. So much worse. She called me to complain, to scream at me actually, because Mom asked her for $10. $10. I repeated the words in my head. Not 100, not 1,000, not the 700 she owed me, 10 for toothpaste for their mother. The mother who had housed her, fed her, bought her cars, and bailed her out of every self-inflicted disaster of her adult life. Put her on speaker, Mark, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Call her back right now. He didn't hesitate. He dialed and the phone rang twice before Chloe answered, her voice already dripping with theatrical woe. What? Mark? Are you calling to yell at me more? No, Chloe, Mark said, his tone flat and dead. I'm calling for a budget breakdown. I just want to understand. You get paid on Friday, it's now Monday. Where did your money go? Oh my God, I can't believe you're doing this, she whined. I have bills, my rent is due, my car payment. Your rent is due on the 1st, which is next week, Mark cut in. Your car payment isn't for 10 more days. I know the schedule. So try again. I had to get gas. And groceries, it's so expensive you have no idea. I saw your Instagram story on Saturday, Chloe. The one from that sushi place downtown. The omakase special there is $80 a person. Was that a grocery? There was a choke sound on the other end. That was a date he paid. Okay, Mark said, relentless. What about the new tattoo you posted on Friday afternoon, the one that covers half your forearm? I'm guessing that wasn't free. What did that run you, $200? $3? That was from my savings. It was for me, she shrieked, her voice cracking. You can't tell me how to spend my own money. I can, Mark shot back, his voice rising for the first time, when you're letting our mother go without toothpaste because you're too broke to spot her $10. The same mother you abandoned during a pandemic. The same mother who took you in every single time you screwed up your life. I am not broke, she screamed, a full-throated feral roar. I'm managing my finances. You don't know anything. Then I guess it's a good thing you're not broke, Mark said, his voice dropping back to ice. Because then there's no excuse, is there? No excuse for not helping Mom, and no excuse for not paying Alice back the $700 you've owed her for a year. The silence that followed was electric. I could feel the pressure building through the phone. Then the explosion. Fuck you, the speaker on the phone distorted with the sheer volume. Fuck Alice and fuck Mommy, I'm done with this family. The line went dead. Mark and I just stared at each other in the ringing silence. Before either of us could speak, my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a notification from my banking app. Asterisk. Zelle payment received, Chloe. Last name sent you. $700. Asterisk. It was proof. A screaming digital confession that she had the money the entire time. Her poverty was a weapon, and she'd just been disarmed. A few minutes later, Mark's phone lit up with a text from Brenda. Chloe had sent her $50 with the note here. Don't ever ask me for anything again, and then she blocked every single one of us. We made a pact that night, Mark and I. We were done. No more rescues, no more loans, no more emotional support for her self-made crises. We explained it to Brenda, who tearfully agreed. You're right, she sniffled. I've enabled her for too long. We all need to be a united front. That united front lasted less than 48 hours. Brenda called me, whispering like a spy. I sent Chloe a text, just to make sure she was okay, from a friend's phone. I told her I still loved her. The cycle clicked right back into place. Forgiveness without apology. The slate wiped clean, ready for the next toxic entry. But Chloe's brand of poison was too potent to be contained. Over the next 6 months, she systematically cut off everyone. An aunt who suggested she see a therapist was blocked. A cousin who didn't text back fast enough was ghosted. Mark's other brother, Ryan, was the last man standing, mostly because he ignored her. Then came the family barbecue for Brenda's birthday. A month before, Ryan got a frantic call from Chloe. She was short on rent again and couldn't bear the thought of asking Mom for money directly, not after how mean everyone was. She asked Ryan to be the middleman. Just ask Mom for $250 for me, she pleaded. Tell her it's for a car repair. She'll give it to you. Brenda, of course, handed over the money. And Ryan, who was just as done as we were, took that $250 and spent every cent of it on brisket beer and a giant birthday cake for Brenda's party. A party to which Chloe was pointedly not invited. We were all in the backyard laughing when the side gate creaked open. There she was. Chloe dressed for a nightclub, holding a single, wilted-looking cupcake. She surveyed the scene, the whole family, the food, the decorations, and her face curdled. What is this? She asked, her voice dangerously high. It's Mom's birthday party, Chloe, Ryan said, not missing a beat as he flipped a burger. And my invitation? Got lost in the mail, Ryan said with a shrug. Same place, my thank you for the rent money must have gone. She threw the cupcake on the ground where it splattered near the dog. You are all horrible, manipulative people, she screamed, tears welling in her eyes. She pointed a shaking finger at Brenda. You let them do this. After everything I've been through, she stormed out, slamming the gate so hard it bounced off its hinges. Later that night, she sent a rambling, tear-filled voice note to Brenda, which was promptly forwarded to all of us. It was a masterpiece of victimhood, painting a picture of a poor, misunderstood daughter who was constantly being persecuted by her cruel, unloving family. Mark deleted it without listening past the first 10 seconds. I don't even care anymore, he said, and I knew he meant it. I knew he meant it because we'd already passed our point of no return. I was reminded of it every time I thought of Chloe. It was an incident from 2 years prior, one that had seemed insane at the time, but now just felt like a perfect summary of her entire being. She'd called Mark at 2 a.m, whispering hysterically, "Mark, oh my God, there's someone in my apartment. I hear noises downstairs." Mark was instantly awake. "Did you call 911? "No," she'd hissed. "Don't be ridiculous." "Why is that ridiculous, Chloe? Someone might be in your house." "Because my landlord lives in the basement apartment," she explained, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "If I call the cops and it's just him, I'll look like an idiot. It would be so rude to wake him up with a bunch of police." Mark was silent for a beat. "So? What do you want me to do?" "Can you just come over?" she'd asked. "You can check it out. If it's a robber, you can handle it. If it's just the landlord, you can leave and he'll never know." It's perfect. She wanted him to leave our bed, drive 30 minutes across town, and potentially confront a burglar with his bare hands, all so she could avoid a moment of potential social awkwardness with her landlord. She would rather risk her brother's life than be perceived as rude. We said no that night, and we've been saying no ever since. The $700 was just the fee I had to pay to finally learn the lesson. Her blocking us wasn't a punishment. It was a reward. The silence she left behind is the most peaceful sound I've ever heard.
Story 8.
When Mark and I first told his parents we were pregnant, I swear his mother Carol levitated. His father Frank, who normally showed all the emotion of a granite countertop, actually cracked a smile. We were in their beige on beige living room, the one with the pristine white carpet no one was allowed to walk on with shoes. A boy, Carol, clapped her bracelets, jangling. "Oh, Frank, our first grandson, a little Peter." I felt Mark's hand tighten on my knee. We had discussed this extensively. Actually, I started trying to keep my voice light. We were thinking about other names. Frank's smile vanished. There are no other names. The firstborn son in this family is always Peter. 7 generations. Jennifer. He said it like he was citing scripture. I know, and we respect that. Mark jumped in, ever the diplomat. "But Peter is difficult for Jen's family?" I took a deep breath and told them the story I had told Mark on our 3rd date. About my Uncle Peter, my mom's vibrant, life-of-the-party younger brother. How he died in a car accident when he was just 19. How my grandmother found him. How on her deathbed, years later, she made my mother promise that no one in our family would ever be named Peter again, that she couldn't bear to hear that name attached to anyone but her lost son. "My grandmother is still alive," I finished softly. It would break her heart. To my shock, Carol's face softened. She reached across the coffee table and patted my hand. "Oh, you poor dear." "Of course. Family is family. We'll make an exception. This one time..." Frank just grunted, but he didn't argue. I felt a tidal wave of relief. They understood. For 6 months they did. They bought us a crib, sent us articles on sleep training, and called Mark every other day for belly updates. The name wasn't mentioned again. We settled on Leo. Strong, simple, and ours. Then at 34 weeks pregnant, I got the call. My grandmother had passed away in her sleep. Peaceful, the doctor said. I was devastated. She was the last of my grandparents, the anchor of my family. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and hushed condolences. Carol and Frank came. They hugged me, brought a casserole, and said all the right things. 2 days later, Carol called. "Just checking in, sweetie," she said. "Now, I know this is a difficult time, but Frank and I were talking about the baby's name." My stomach went cold. "What about it?" "Well, with your grandmother gone, God rest her soul, there's really no reason not to honor our family's tradition now, is there? The obligation is lifted." I was speechless. She was using my grandmother's death as a loophole. Carol, the promise to my grandmother doesn't die with her. The pain of what happened to my uncle doesn't just disappear. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Jennifer," she said, her voice turning sharp. "This is about honoring our family's legacy. A legacy your son will be a part of. We'll be calling him Peter." "No," I said, my voice shaking. "You won't. His name is going to be Leo." I hung up. The pressure campaign started that night. Text from Frank about duty and heritage. Daily calls from Carol alternating between syrupy guilt trips and outright demands. They told Mark I was being selfish, that I was letting a ghost from the past rob their grandson of his birthright. They were relentless. It was a miserable final month of pregnancy. Leo was born on a Tuesday morning, 10 pounds of fury and perfection. We were exhausted, overwhelmed, and completely in love. Mark sent a picture to his parents with the announcement, "Leo has arrived. Mom and baby are doing great." The reply came from Frank. "Unacceptable. You have dishonored this family." They didn't visit. They didn't even call. For 2 months we were in a bubble of bliss and baby-related chaos, but a dark cloud hung over it all. Mark was torn up, angry at his parents, but miserable without them. I was consumed by a toxic mix of rage and guilt. One afternoon, the doorbell rang. It was Frank standing on our porch alone, holding a thick manila envelope. "Mark here?" he asked, not meeting my eye. "He's at the store." I held Leo closer, blocking the doorway. "Fine." He thrust the envelope at me. "Here. For the baby." I opened it. It was full of cash. Stacks of hundreds. My heart hammered against my ribs. "What is this?" $10,000, he said, his voice flat. "That should be enough to cover the legal fees and whatever else. Go to the courthouse tomorrow, file the paperwork, and change his name to Peter. We can forget this whole ugly business." I stared at him at the money, then back at his stony face. He wasn't bribing me. He was trying to buy my son's identity. "Get out of my house," I whispered. He just turned and walked away. When Mark got home, I told him everything. He saw the envelope on the counter and his face went white with fury. That was the last straw for him. The silence from their end became absolute. Then about 3 weeks later, my phone rang. It was Carol sobbing. "I can't do this anymore, Jennifer," she cried. "I'm so sorry. I just want to see my grandson. Please." Frank is sorry too. We were wrong. We just want to be in his life. Mark and I were skeptical, but the thought of Leo growing up without his grandparents was painful. We cautiously agreed to a visit. They showed up with a mountain of gifts, cooing over Leo and telling us how perfect he was. They apologized again, tears in their eyes. For 3 weeks, it was like a dream. They came over constantly, helping with laundry, letting us nap, playing with the baby. Things felt normal, repaired. But I noticed something odd. They never said his name. Not once. It was always the little guy, sweetheart, my handsome grandson. I pointed it out to Mark, but he waved it off. "They're trying, Jen. It's probably just a hard habit to break. Give him some time." I tried to believe him. I wanted to believe him. This afternoon, I took Leo to the park. It was a gorgeous day, and he was finally old enough to enjoy being outside. As I was settling him into the swing, I saw Carol walking up the path. "Fancy meeting you here," she chirped, her smile huge. She scooped Leo out of the swing and gave him a smothering kiss. "I was just getting some fresh air," I said, forcing a smile back. "He loves watching the dogs." Carol started parading him around the playground, showing him off like a trophy. She fell into conversation with another woman, a grandmother with her own toddler in tow. I hung back, pulling my phone out to snap a picture of them. The woman gestured to Leo. "Oh, he's just beautiful. What's his name?" I zoomed in with my phone's camera, ready to capture the moment. Through the speaker, I heard Carol's bright, proud voice clear as a bell. This is Peter." The world narrowed to the sound of that single impossible word. Asterisk Peter. Asterisks. My phone clattered from my numb fingers onto the wood chips. The picture I took was a blurry shot of the ground. For a second, I couldn't breathe. It was like being plunged into ice water. The bright, sunny park, the laughter of other kids, it all faded into a dull roar. Carol didn't notice. She was still beaming at the other woman, bouncing my son in her arms. "My son, Leo." I walked toward them, my steps feeling strange and disconnected on the soft ground. The other grandmother must have seen the look on my face because her smile faltered. She muttered a quick goodbye and hustled her own toddler toward the slide. "Carol," I said. My voice came out low and tight. "Jennifer, isn't this fun? He just loves the fresh air." She kissed his cheek, oblivious. "What did you call him?" Her smile froze in place, becoming a brittle mask. "What are you talking about, dear?" "I heard you. You introduced my son to that woman as Peter." She let out a nervous little laugh. "Oh, silly me. A slip of the tongue, with the family tradition and all, it's just on my mind." It was the lie that did it. The casual, condescending way she tried to brush me off as if I were a hysterical child. I saw the whole 3 weeks for what they were a long con. A campaign to slowly erase the child we had and replace him with the one they wanted. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I simply reached out and took my son from her arms, holding him tight against my chest. He smelled like baby powder and sunshine. "We're leaving," I said. I turned and walked away, not looking back. I could feel her eyes on me, hot with shock and indignation. I didn't care. I strapped Leo into his car seat, my hands shaking so badly I fumbled with the buckle 3 times. Once we were on the road, I pulled over, my heart hammering against my ribs, and called Mark. "She called him Peter," I said the second he answered. There was no preamble. She introduced him to a complete stranger as Peter. Silence. Then a low sound from Mark, like the growl of an animal. "Where are you?" "On my way home." "Good," he said, his voice hard as flint. "I'm leaving work. I'll meet you there. This ends tonight." When I got home, Mark's car was already in the driveway. He met me at the door, his face a thundercloud. He took Leo from my arms and just held him, looking from my face to our son's. "I'm so sorry, Jen," he whispered. I wanted to believe they'd changed. So did I. I said, my throat thick. He put Leo in his bassinet and pulled out his phone. He didn't hesitate. "Mom. Dad. You need to come over to our house, right now." He listened for a moment, his jaw tight. "No, it can't wait." "Get here." They arrived 20 minutes later, all smiles and faint concern. Carol came through the door first, holding a Tupperware container. "I brought that lemon loaf you like, sweetie." Mark blocked the entryway, his arms crossed. He didn't move to let them in further. "We need to talk." Frank grunted, stepping up beside his wife. "What's this all about? We were in the middle of dinner." Jen took Leo to the park today. Mark started, his voice dangerously calm. "She ran into you, Mom." Carol's face went pale. "Yes, it was a lovely surprise. She heard you talking to another woman. She heard what you called your grandson." Carol clutched her purse. "I already explained to Jennifer. It was a slip of the tongue, an accident." "Was it an accident?" Mark's voice rose. "Or is that what you've been calling him this whole time, behind our backs?" This time it was Frank who answered. He took a step forward, his expression one of pure defiance. "We call him by his rightful name. The name he should have been given." The confession hung in the air, sickening and absolute. They weren't sorry. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. Carol nodded, finding her courage in her husband's arrogance. It's a matter of respect for this family's history. Something Jennifer clearly doesn't understand. We're just correcting her mistake. In private, of course. I felt a laugh bubble up, bitter and incredulous. Correcting my mistake? You've been lying to our faces for weeks. You pretended to accept our son, but you were just waiting for a chance to erase his name, to erase our choice? It was a selfish choice, Carol snapped, her voice finally losing its syrupy sweetness and turning sharp as broken glass. You are denying him his heritage over some silly sentimental nonsense for a dead woman. That was it. That was the line. I saw something in Mark break. The last thread of hope of filial duty just snapped. He pointed to the door. Get out. Frank scoffed. Don't be ridiculous, son. We're your parents. No, Mark said, his voice shaking with a rage I'd never heard from him before. You are the people who tried to bribe us. You are the people who ignored us for 2 months. And now you are the people who have systematically disrespected my wife and my son in our own home. You are not welcome here. Get out of my house. Now. He took a step toward them, and for the first time, I saw my father-in-law flinch. Carol grabbed Frank's arm, her face a mask of fury, and pulled him toward the door. She threw the container of lemon loaf onto our porch as she left. It popped open, spilling cake onto the welcome mat. Mark slammed the door behind them and locked it. The silence that followed was deafening. He leaned his forehead against the door, his shoulders heaving. I went to him, wrapping my arms around him from behind. We stood like that for a long time. The anger slowly drained out of me, and in its place, something else settled. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't sadness. It was peace. The heavy, suffocating weight I'd been carrying for months, the guilt that I was the one tearing this family apart, was just gone. I hadn't done this. My grief hadn't done this. My promise to my grandmother hadn't done this. They had. Their obsession, their entitlement, their profound disrespect. Mark finally turned around, his eyes red-rimmed but clear. They will not see him again. I know, I said. Not until they can look him in the eye, call him Leo, and apologize to you for what they've done. I nodded, my heart swelling with love for this man. And if they never can? He walked over to the bassinet and looked down at our sleeping son. He gently stroked Leo's soft cheek with the back of his finger. Then they will never know him, he said, his voice firm with a finality that was absolute. And that will be their loss, not ours. He was right. Our revenge wouldn't be loud or dramatic. It would be quiet. It would be the sound of Leo's laughter in a house they were not welcome in. It would be every birthday, every holiday, every milestone they would miss, all because they couldn't offer our son the most basic fundamental respect of using his own name. They had chosen a ghost over their grandson. And now they would be ghost to him.
Story 9.
I'm pretty sure the smell of bacon-wrapped jalapeno poppers is the official scent of marital bliss. At least it was in my house. Every Sunday, our apartment transformed into a shrine to soccer, beer, and deep-fried everything. And I was its high priestess. Zoe, you're a culinary wizard, Dave said, his mouth full of the mini pulled pork slider I just handed him. Mark, you seriously married up? My husband, Mark, beamed from his throne on the sofa. He slung an arm around my waist and pulled me into his side, planting a greasy kiss on my temple. Tell me something I don't know, man. His friends Dave, Kevin, and Sam all laughed, raising their craft beer bottles in a toast. I just smiled, refilling a bowl with homemade guacamole. This was my domain. 2 years ago, I'd been a top performer in a cutthroat sales job, living on stress and lukewarm coffee. When Mark got a huge promotion, he'd floated the idea of me quitting, You could finally relax, he'd said. Make our house a real home. I jumped at the chance. And honestly, I loved it. I loved turning our generic apartment into a cozy nest. I loved seeing the genuine appreciation on Mark's face when he came home to a clean house and a hot meal. And I especially loved these Sundays when his friends would look at him with a kind of holy envy. I wasn't just a wife. I was times the times wife. The one who made it all look effortless. The one who proved he'd made it. Their praise was a warm blanket and I wrapped myself in it tightly. After the guys left high on victory and buffalo chicken dip, Mark helped me clear the last of the plates. You were amazing today, babe, he said, grabbing my hand and spinning me around in the kitchen. I laughed, swatting at his chest. I just made snacks. No, it's not just snacks. It's everything. The guys can't stop talking about how lucky I am. He leaned in his voice, dropping to a low murmur. And I have something for you. A little thank you. My heart did a little flutter. You don't have to get me anything. I know. But I wanted to. He grinned. It's for the next game night. Something special. A few days later, he came home with a rectangular box, elegantly wrapped in silver paper with a thick navy blue bow. It looked expensive. My mind raced. Was it a designer handbag? A beautiful cashmere sweater for the fall? Mark, it's gorgeous, I said, tracing the ribbon with my finger. What's the occasion? The occasion is you, he said, sitting on the edge of the sofa, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Go on. Open it. I carefully slid the ribbon off and tore away a corner of the paper. Inside was a plain white box. I lifted the lid, my breath catching in my throat. My fingers pushed aside layers of tissue paper, expecting to feel soft wool or smooth leather. Instead, they met something cold, slick, and squeaky. I pulled it out. The thing unfurled in my hands, a shocking slash of crimson. It was a dress, if you could even call it that. It was made of cheap, shiny red latex, the exact color of his favorite team, Manchester United. The neckline plunged to the navel, and the hemline wouldn't even graze the tops of my thighs. It smelled like a new set of tires. I stared at it, my brain short-circuiting. I looked from the plasticky horror in my hands to my husband's beaming face. He was practically vibrating with excitement. What do you think? He asked, his grin wide and expectant. I couldn't find my voice. I just kept staring at the dress. He laughed, a loud booming sound that felt entirely out of place in the sudden dead quiet of the room. The guys are going to lose their minds, he said, his voice giddy. Can you imagine their faces when you walk out with a tray of nachos wearing times that asterisk? My stomach turned. I finally managed to croak out a single question. Is this a joke? For a split second, the grin on his face faltered. A flicker of something else annoyance crossed his eyes. He'd been expecting me to laugh, to find this as hilarious as he did. Then just as quickly, the mask was back in place. He threw his head back and laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. Brittle. Of course it's a joke, a prank. Oh man, you should see your face. I didn't smile. I let the dress drop back into the box as if it had burned my hands. It's not funny, Mark. His smile vanished completely. What come on, Zoe? Lighten up. It's just for a laugh. You want me to serve your friends? In that, the words felt like stones in my mouth. I felt a hot flush of shame creep up my neck. I pictured Dave's eyes, Kevin's leering grin. The thought made me physically ill. It's a costume, babe, like for Halloween, he insisted, his voice taking on a wheedling tone. It would be hilarious. No, I said, my voice flat and final. It wouldn't. His face tightened. He stood up, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of pure frustration. God, I forgot how uptight you can be sometimes. I spend money on a gift, I try to do something funny and fun, and you suck all the air out of the room. He saw the hurt on my face and quickly tried to backtrack. Look, forget it. It was a dumb idea, okay, a joke that didn't land. He gestured vaguely at the box on the coffee table. Just whatever. Forget about it. He walked out of the living room and into the kitchen, the sound of him yanking open the refrigerator door echoing in the tense silence. I was left alone, staring at the box. A joke. He said, it was a joke. But the initial genuine delight I'd seen in his eyes, the pure unadulterated excitement at the thought of me serving his friends in that thing, told a very different story. The silver wrapping paper lay crumpled on the floor, looking like a discarded promise. I felt a cold dread settle deep in my gut, a feeling I hadn't had since my high-stress sales days. The feeling that I had misread the room completely. I tried to forget about it. For the rest of the week, I scrubbed and baked and organized with a frantic energy trying to scour the memory of that slick red vinyl from my mind. Mark was magnanimous. He was sweet and apologetic, admitting the joke was in poor taste. We were fine. Everything was fine. Until Sunday morning. There it was laid out on my side of the dresser like a sacrificial offering. The red latex dress. It looked even cheaper in the morning light, its plastic sheen catching the sun in a way that felt obscene. Mark walked out of the bathroom toweling his hair, a bright, oblivious smile on his face. Morning, beautiful. I can't wait for the guys to get here. He gestured to the dress with the towel. And I really can't wait to see you in that. The air in the room went still and cold. I stared at him, my voice barely a whisper. You said it was a joke. His smile didn't falter, but it changed. It became something brittle, something fixed. It is a joke. That's the point. We're all in on it. I'm not in on it, I said, my voice gaining a little strength. And I'm not wearing it. His demeanor snapped. The cheerful husband from 30 seconds ago vanished, replaced by a sullen stranger. He tossed the damp towel onto our white duvet. For Christ's sake, Zoe. Are you going to be like this all day? It's a piece of fabric. It's not fabric, Mark. It's a fetish costume. He let out a sharp, exasperated laugh. Oh my God, listen to yourself. You're so fucking uptight. It's a laugh. Kevin's wife dressed up as a sexy referee last year. Nobody died. That's different, and you know it. This is... I couldn't even say it. Humiliating. Degrading. Not funny. It times is times funny, he hissed, his voice dropping low and sharp. It's funny to everyone but you. Why do you always have to ruin things? Just play along. Don't be an idiot. Asterisk. Idiot asterisk. The word hung in the air between us, ugly and final. It was terrifyingly clear. He'd never intended for this to be a joke. The joke was just his escape hatch in case I said no. And now that I had the real, Mark was coming out. The one who saw my refusal not as a boundary, but as a personal betrayal. No, I said. The word was small, but it felt like a concrete pillar in my throat. His face contorted with a mix of fury and disbelief. Fine. Whatever. Be a boring prude. See if I care. He snatched a t-shirt from a drawer and yanked it over his head, not looking at me again before he stormed out of the bedroom. The game was a special kind of hell. I put on my usual jeans and a simple sweater. I served the bacon-wrapped jalapeno poppers and the 7-layer dip. I smiled and refilled beer bottles. But the warmth was gone. A sheet of ice had formed between Mark and me, and his friends could feel the chill. Everything okay, you two? Dave asked during a commercial break, noticing that Mark hadn't touched me once. Mark forced a laugh. Yeah, man, all good. Zoe's just a little sensitive today. He glanced at me, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. Guess she doesn't have the team spirit she used to. I felt my cheeks burn. The praise that had once been my validation now felt like a spotlight on my failure. I wasn't the perfect hostess today. I was the uptight wife who couldn't take a joke. I saw them exchange glances. In their eyes, I was no longer the culinary wizard, the wife he was lucky to have. I was the ball and chain, the fun killer. The mask I wore all afternoon began to crack. While they were roaring at the TV, I stood in the kitchen staring at the dirty dishes piling up in the sink. This whole life I'd built this carefully curated image of domestic bliss was a sham. I hadn't made a home. I'd built a stage. A stage for Mark to perform his success with me as his most valuable prop. The perfect wife, the perfect hostess, the girl who left her own ambitions behind to fluff his pillows and his ego. The latex dress wasn't a joke. It was an upgrade. A new shinier prop for him to show off. He didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as the high-gloss finish on his successful life. And my financial dependence, which I had once seen as a luxury, was actually the leash he held in his hand. He'd gifted me this comfortable cage, and I had decorated it myself, foolishly believing I was free. After the guys left, the silence was deafening. Mark didn't help me clean. He sat on the sofa, scrolling through his phone, radiating a cold, punishing anger. I moved around him, clearing empty bottles and crumpled napkins, feeling like a ghost in my own home. My home. The one I'd quit my job for. The one I couldn't afford on my own. That realization hit me like a punch to the gut. It knocked the air from my lungs and left me dizzy with a terrifying clarity. This wasn't about a dress anymore. It was about survival. I finished loading the dishwasher and walked past him into our home office, the room that had become my craft corner filled with half-finished knitting projects and scrapbooks. I pushed aside a basket of yarn and opened my laptop, blowing a thin layer of dust off the keyboard. The battery was dead. I plugged it in, and while it whirred back to life, I stared at my reflection in the dark screen. The face staring back at me wasn't the happy, relaxed homemaker I'd tried so hard to be. It was the face of a fighter. A top performer. A woman who had once closed six-figure deals without breaking a sweat. I'd let her go dormant. I'd let Mark convince me that her ambition and drive were character flaws, that I was better off being soft and accommodating. I'd traded my power for his approval. Never again. The screen lit up. I ignored the old vacation photos that formed the desktop background. I opened a web browser, my fingers flying across the keys with a purpose I hadn't felt in 2 years. I logged into my LinkedIn profile, the password coming back to me instantly. I scrolled through messages I'd ignored for months, my eyes landing on a name. Michael Shaw. My old boss. My profile picture was 2 years old. In it, I was wearing a sharp blazer, my smile, confident and professional. I looked like a stranger. I clicked Edit Profile. My heart hammering against my ribs. Not with fear, but with a cold, thrilling resolve. Mark wanted me to be a joke. Fine. But I was about to write my own punchline.
Story Teen.
The phone call came at 2 a.m., the kind that never brings good news. My mother's voice was a frayed wire. There's been an accident, Catherine. A car crash. I sat up in bed, the sheets tangled around my legs. Luke stirred beside me, his hand finding my back. Who, I asked, though I already knew? There were only 2 people my parents would call me about at this hour. It's Ava, she choked out. And Richard. They're both gone. Ava. My sister, Richard, my ex-fiancé, gone. The 2 words hung in the air, heavy and unreal. 5 years. 5 years of silence, of building a wall so high and thick I convinced myself I couldn't feel anything on the other side. Now 2 words had sledgehammered it to dust. I was numb at the funeral. I watched them lower 2 caskets into the ground and felt nothing but a distant, hollow ache. The real gut punch came 2 days later, sitting on my parents' stiff floral sofa, the air thick with the scent of lilies and grief. The state has her, my father said, staring at his hands. They won't give her to us. My heart conditioned your mother's hip. They said, we're not suitable guardians. Her. Lily. The 5-year-old product of the affair that blew my life apart. The living, breathing proof of my sister's betrayal with the man I was supposed to marry. That's a shame, I said, my voice flat. I just wanted to go home. My mother leaned forward, her eyes red-rimmed and desperate. Catherine, you have to take her! The air left my lungs. What? No, absolutely not. She's your niece, Mom pleaded, her voice rising. She's family, your own flesh and blood. She is the daughter of my sister and my ex-fiancé. I shot back the words like acid. She is a constant reminder of the worst thing that has ever happened to me. I can't. I won't. How can you be so cold? She whispered, tears welling up again. She's an orphan. A little girl who has lost everything. And whose fault is that? The question was out before I could stop it. My father flinched. My mother just stared at me, her expression hardening from grief into a familiar, disappointed glare. She is an innocent child, she said, her voice dangerously low. I know she is, I said, standing up. And she deserves a home with people who can look at her and not feel their insides twist into knots. That isn't me. It will never be me. I walked out, ignoring their calls behind me. When I got home, I collapsed into Luke's arms and told him everything. He just held me, stroking my hair, letting me cry out the years of pent-up anger and pain. He didn't say I told you so, even though he'd warned me this would happen. So, what do we do? He asked gently when I'd finally calmed down. We do nothing, I said, my voice hoarse. There's nothing to do. I said no. Okay, he said, kissing my forehead. Then the answer is no. We're a team. End of story. Of course, it wasn't the end of the story. My parents, realizing they were hitting a brick wall with me, decided to go around it. Luke's phone rang a few days later while we were making dinner. He answered, his brow furrowing as he listened. Hello, Helen, he said, his tone polite but firm. He walked into the living room, but I could still hear his side of the conversation. I understand you're in a difficult position. No, I hear you. But Catherine has made her feelings clear. With all due respect, my job is to support my fiancé. Her well-being is my only priority. Yes, I understand the child is innocent. But this is Catherine's decision to make. No. We will not be changing our minds. Please don't call me about this again. He came back into the kitchen and slid his phone onto the counter. He looked at me, his expression a mixture of anger and sympathy. Your mom, I asked, though I knew. Yeah, he sighed. You're a reasonable man, Luke. You can make her see sense approach. She told me what a wonderful father I'd be. How taking in Lily would be the ultimate act of love and forgiveness. How it would heal the family. Jesus, I breathed, turning off the stove. My appetite was gone. I shut it down, Kat, he said, pulling me into a hug. I told her we are a united front and to stop trying to drive a wedge between us. I buried my face in his chest. Thank you. Always, he whispered into my hair. After that, there was silence. A full week of it. No calls, no texts, no unannounced visits. A part of me, the naive, hopeful part, thought maybe they'd finally heard me. Maybe they had accepted my decision and were looking for other solutions. We spent the week in a fragile peace, talking about our wedding plans, watching movies, trying to reclaim some sense of normalcy. It felt like we'd weathered the storm. Friday night, we ordered a pizza and cracked open a bottle of wine. We were curled up on the couch, laughing at some stupid reality show, and for the first time in weeks, I felt light. I felt safe. Then the doorbell rang. Luke glanced at me. We weren't expecting anyone. He got up to answer it, and I heard the lock click open. Helen David Luke's voice was tight with surprise. What are you guys doing here? I felt a cold dread wash over me. I stood up slowly as my parents walked into the living room. They weren't crying anymore. My father wouldn't meet my eye, but my mother, her face was set in a look of chilling strategic resolve. This wasn't a plea. This was an ambush. "Catherine," she said, her voice completely level. "We need to talk. We've come up with a new angle on this whole situation. A better one I think you'll find very appealing." I stared at her, my wine glass still in my hand. Appealing? What are you talking about? Luke stood beside me, his arm a rigid line at his side. "Helen, David, this isn't a good time." My mother ignored him, her eyes locked on me. "Think of the story, Catherine. The optics. A woman so horribly betrayed. Her sister and her fiancé gone in a tragic instant. And what does she do? She rises above it all. She takes in their orphan child. She becomes a saint." The word hit me like a physical blow. "A saint," I repeated, my voice, a low, dangerous tremor. "You want me to adopt a child as a PR move?" "It's not just a PR move," my father chimed in, finally looking at me. "It's about how people see you. How they see our family. Forgiving. Strong." "I don't give a damn how people see me," I hissed, setting my glass down on the coffee table with a sharp crack. "This is a child's life, not a goddamn redemption arc for a TV movie. Are you out of your minds?" My mother's carefully constructed composure shattered. The strategic resolve in her face curdled into pure, unadulterated fury. "Oh, forgive us for trying to find a way to appeal to your monumental selfishness," she snapped. "We thought, if we couldn't appeal to your heart, we might appeal to your vanity." "My vanity," I laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "This has nothing to do with vanity. This is about my life. The one I barely managed to stitch back together after Ava and Richard blew it to pieces." "So, you'll just let her rot in the system," my father boomed, stepping forward. "Is that it? Punishment for their sins falls on a 5-year-old girl." "This isn't my mess to clean up," I yelled, my hands clenched into fists. "It's not my fault you raised a daughter who would sleep with her sister's fiancé. It's not my fault they were careless. And it's not my fault the state thinks you're too old and sick to handle a child." My mother gasped her hand, flying to her chest as if I'd stabbed her. My father's face went purple with rage. "You heartless bitch," he spat the words heavy and wet. "That is your own flesh and blood you're talking about. Your niece." "David, that's enough," Luke said, stepping between us. My father barely glanced at him. "You stay out of this. This is family." "Family," I shot back. "This is what family does, tries to manipulate, to bully, to force someone into a life they don't want, a life that will destroy them." "Destroy you?" My mother's voice was venom. "What about Lily? Do you know what's happening to her right now? Do you even care? She's been in 4 different foster homes in 3 weeks. 4, Catherine. They said she cries all night and doesn't speak to anyone. She's being passed around like a parcel nobody wants. Because the only family she has left thinks taking her in would be too much of an inconvenience." The air went thin. 4 homes. The number felt like a punch to the gut, a calculated blow designed to cause maximum damage. I looked at her, searching for a flicker of a lie, but her eyes were hard and certain. "You don't get to do this," I whispered, shaking my head. "You don't get to lay this at my feet. The consequences of times there, times actions. The consequences of times your times, grief." "Our grief," she screeched, all pretense of control gone. "We can't even get custody of our own grandchild. We have to watch from the sidelines while she suffers, all because our only living daughter refuses to do the decent thing. Your refusal isn't just hurting Lily, it's killing us." She was crying now, but they weren't the soft, pleading tears from before. They were hard, angry tears, accusatory. She was pointing a finger, painting me as the villain who was compounding her tragedy. She had taken all the pain from the affair, from the crash, from their own inability to step up, and placed the entire crushing weight of it directly on my shoulders. "We're done here," Luke said, his voice leaving no room for argument. He put a firm hand on my back and another on my father's shoulder, steering him toward the door. "You need to leave. Now." My father didn't resist. He just stared at me, his face a mask of disgust. My mother let out a final ragged sob. "I don't know who you are anymore, Catherine," she said, her voice dripping with disappointment. "Ava may have broken your heart, but you have no heart left to break." Then they were gone. Luke shut the door and bolted it. The silence they left behind was deafening, heavier than all their shouting. I stood frozen in the middle of the living room, the echo of my mother's words ringing in my ears. Asterisk. No heart left to break. Asterisk. I sank onto the couch, the pizza and wine on the table looking like relics from another lifetime. Luke sat beside me, wrapping his arms around me, pulling me against his chest. I didn't cry. I felt too hollow for tears. My parents hadn't just attacked me. They had surgically implanted a shard of doubt into the deepest part of my soul. They had held up a mirror, and in it I saw a monster. A cold, selfish woman who had let a child her own blood suffer in a broken system to protect her own peace. A woman who put her own comfort above the needs of a traumatized little girl. Luke held me tighter. "Don't listen to them, Kat. They were trying to hurt you." That's all it was. "But what if they're right?" I heard myself say, the voice small and foreign. "Four homes, Luke? What if that's true? She's just a little kid. She lost her parents. And I'm just leaving her there. All because I can't stand the sight of her." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. I was protecting myself. I was protecting my life with Luke. I was setting a boundary against the people who had hurt me more than anyone in the world. It had felt so right, so necessary. But was it right? Was protecting my own sanity worth the price of a child's stability? Does refusing to raise the living embodiment of my trauma make me a monster? Or does it just make me an asshole? I honestly didn't know anymore.
Story 11.
I always say you can't choose your family, but you can choose who you love. And I love Freya. I practically raised her. My sister Clara lived in the house next door for 16 years. Freya had a key to my place before she could properly spell her own name. She was the scraped knees. I bandaged the bedtime stories. I read the temper tantrums. I soothe with ice cream. She wasn't just my niece. She was my girl. For her last birthday, I got her the newest iPad. She'd been dropping hints for months, and watching her face light up when she tore off the wrapping paper was better than any gift I could have received myself. We spent the rest of the afternoon setting it up together on my couch, downloading her art apps, her fingers flying across the screen. "Aunt Lily, you're the best," she said, leaning her head on my shoulder. I know I'd said, squeezing her tight. "I've got your back." Then there's Olivia. Olivia is also my niece. Technically. Her mother, Sarah, is my brother Mark's wife. When Olivia was 2, Sarah got a wild hair about a new start and dragged her and Mark all the way to Oregon. Oregon. Like it was on another planet. For 12 years, Olivia was a face on a screen. A pixelated, slightly delayed stranger I had to talk to on holidays while Mark stood awkwardly in the background waving. I sent birthday cards, always with a crisp $50 bill tucked inside. I never knew what to buy her. What is a 7-year-old in Portland like a 10-year-old? A 14-year-old, I had no idea. I didn't know her favorite color, her best subject in school, or if she was allergic to peanuts. Freya, I could tell you her entire life story down to the name of the hamster she had in 3rd grade, Mr. Squeakums. Olivia was a blank page. So when Mark called 3 months ago to say they were moving back, I felt nothing. A vague sense of dread, maybe. It wasn't for him. I was happy my brother was finally coming home. It was for the forced proximity to a situation I had no interest in fixing. The first family dinner was a train wreck in slow motion. It was at my house. I'd made Freya's favorite lasagna, not even thinking to ask if Olivia was a picky eater. She and Sarah walked in, and the air immediately felt thick. Olivia was small for 14 with big watchful eyes that looked just like my brother's. She stood half hidden behind her mother, clutching the strap of a tote bag like a lifeline. "Olivia, look at you," I said, my voice a little too loud, a little too bright. I went in for a hug, but it was stiff. I was hugging a stranger. I could feel her tense up, her shoulders rigid against my arms. I let go quickly. "Hi, Aunt Lily," she mumbled to the floor. Freya bounced in from the living room. "Aunt Lily, did you see the email from the film festival? My short got accepted." I forgot all about Olivia and Sarah standing in my foyer. I wrapped Freya in a huge hug, spinning her around. "No, Freya. That's incredible. Oh my God. We have to celebrate. I'm so proud of you." We chattered excitedly all the way to the kitchen. I could feel Sarah's eyes on my back, a familiar judgmental heat. Throughout dinner, the divide was Grand Canyon-sized. I'd ask Freya about her friends, her classes, the drama with her soccer coach. We fell into our easy laughing rhythm. Then I'd remember the other 2 people at the table and try to bridge the gap. "So, Olivia," I said, turning to her, "how's the new school?" She shrugged, pushing a piece of garlic bread around her plate. "It's fine. Just fine," I pressed, trying to sound interested. "It's big," she offered. The conversation died right there. What was I supposed to do with that? I didn't know her teachers, her classmates, or the name of the school mascot. It was like trying to start a fire with wet wood. I gave up and turned back to Freya. The pattern repeated itself. A few weeks later, at Mark's place for a barbecue, I brought Freya a new lens for the camera I'd gotten her for Christmas. She shrieked with delight and spent the next hour taking artistic shots of leaves and garden gnomes. I handed Olivia a small, generically wrapped gift bag. "Just a little something to welcome you to town," I said. She opened it. Inside was a $50 gift card to Target. "Oh," she said. Her voice was flat. "Thanks." She put it on the table and didn't look at it again. Sarah shot me a look that could curdle milk. I just stared back. What did she want from me? Pony? I didn't know the girl. A gift card is practical. It's what you get for people you don't know. The truth is, I didn't see Olivia as my niece. I saw her as Sarah's daughter. A living, breathing reminder of the years Sarah stole my brother from us, the years she decided her family wasn't good enough. My bond with Freya was built on 16 years of proximity, of effort, of love. It was built on scraped knees and movie nights and showing up. Sarah had denied me that with Olivia, and I wasn't about to pretend 12 years of absence could be erased with a shopping trip and some small talk. The real bomb, the one that would blow everything to pieces, was still ticking. I just didn't know it yet. It was Freya's idea, really. We were watching a travel show one night, curled up on my couch, and a segment on Cappadocia came on. The sky was filled with hundreds of hot air balloons drifting over these bizarre cone-shaped rock formations. "Can you imagine?" Freya whispered, her eyes wide. "Seeing that for real?" A seed was planted. An extravagant, insane, wonderful seed. for her 16th birthday. A special trip, just the two of us. A real adventure. I spent the next month secretly researching, planning an itinerary that would blow her mind. Istanbul's Grand Bazaar, the Blue Mosque, and then the grand finale, a sunrise hot air balloon ride in Cappadocia. It was perfect. It was a once-in-a-lifetime gift for my once-in-a-lifetime girl. I couldn't keep it in. I was bursting with it. Last Sunday, everyone was over at my place for dinner again. The mood was the usual, strained but civil. After we cleared the plates, I couldn't wait another second. "Okay, Freya, close your eyes," I said, beaming. She laughed and covered her eyes with her hands. I pulled my laptop from the counter, already open to a gallery of stunning photos from Turkey. "Okay. Open." I spun the laptop around. Freya gasped. Her eyes scanned the images, the balloons, the ancient ruins, the turquoise waters. "What is this?" she breathed. That I announced to the room, my voice full of pride, "is where we are going for your 16th birthday. 10 days in Turkey. Just you and me." Freya launched herself at me, screaming with pure joy. "Are you serious? Are you kidding me? Aunt Lily?" We were both laughing, caught up in the whirlwind of the moment. I was so focused on her ecstatic face, on planning aloud. All the things we would do and see, the spice markets we'd visit, the ancient city of Ephesus we'd explore, that I didn't notice the silence that had fallen over the rest of the room. I didn't see my brother Mark's uneasy glance at his wife. I didn't see Olivia's face, her fork frozen halfway to her mouth, her eyes fixed on the glowing screen with a look of desperate, painful longing. I only noticed when the celebrating stopped. The silence pressed in, heavy and suffocating. I finally looked up from the laptop. Sarah was staring at me. Her expression unreadable, her jaw tight. She cleared her throat, and the small sound cut through the room like a knife. "Lily," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "What about Olivia?" The question hung in the air, sucking all the joy out of the room. I looked at Sarah. Her face was a mask of strained politeness, but her eyes were hard. Freya, still clinging to my arm, went rigid. "What about her?" I asked, my voice flat. "Well," Sarah said, gesturing vaguely at the laptop. "It's a big trip. Can she be included? I'll pay for her ticket, of course." I stared at her. The audacity. The sheer unmitigated gall. She wanted to piggyback on my gift. My special once-in-a-lifetime trip with my girl. She wanted to insert her stranger daughter into the middle of it, a ghost at the feast. I laughed. It wasn't a nice sound. "No." Sarah's jaw tightened. "No. Just no. No. I don't know her, and I don't feel comfortable doing that." I said, clipping each word. "This is for Freya. It's a gift for her asterisk. They are both your nieces." "Lily?" Sarah shot back, her voice rising. "They are sisters' children. You can't just pick one and pretend the other doesn't exist. How do you think that makes her feel?" She gestured towards Olivia, who had shrunk into her chair, her face pale. The girl looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. For a split second, I felt a flicker of something, pity maybe. But then I looked at Sarah's righteous, demanding face, and all I felt was white-hot rage. She did this. This was her creation. How does she feel? I repeated, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous level. I finally stood up, leaning my hands on the table. "You want to talk about feelings, Sarah? Let's talk. A collective gasp went through the room. My brother Mark finally spoke. Lily, for God's sake. I cut him off, my eyes locked on Sarah. No. You don't get to waltz back here after 12 years and demand I feel something I don't. And this I said, waving a hand between myself and the silent, miserable girl in the chair. This is your time's fault. What did you expect when you took her away from us? That I'd magically conjure up a decade of love and memories? That I'd just hand over thousands of dollars for a trip with a stranger? Because you decided to move home. Olivia made a small choked sound. She pushed her chair back, the legs scraping horribly against the floor, and fled the room. We heard her footsteps pounding up the stairs, followed by a slamming door. Sarah stood up, her eyes blazing with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. You are a cruel, bitter woman, she spat. She's a child. A child who has done nothing to you. I'm not cruel, I said, my voice shaking with adrenaline. I'm honest. You wanted a new start. Well, this is it. This is the consequence. You're an idiot, she whispered, the words filled with venom. Then she turned and walked out of the room, calling for Mark to get their things. He looked at me, his face a mess of shame and anger, before following his wife. A moment later, the front door slammed shut, rattling the pictures on my wall. The silence they left behind was deafening. Freya slowly detached herself from my arm. Aunt Lily. She started, her voice small. Don't, I said, not looking at her. Don't you dare start. Clara, my sister, who had been frozen this whole time, finally moved. That was harsh, Lil. Was it? I snapped, turning on her. Or was it the truth? She expects me to treat them the same. They are not the same. Is Freya the same to you as some random kid on the street? Of course not. Because you put in the time, I put in the time, Sarah put in miles. I spent the next 2 days stewing. The family text chain was a minefield. Mark sent a single curt message times. You owe my wife and daughter a massive apology. Asterisk. I didn't respond. He could wait until hell froze over. My mother called, pleading with me to be the bigger person. She's just a child, Lily. My mom said, her voice weary. Then her mother should have thought of that before she demanded I take her on a $5,000 vacation. I retorted and hung up. I was being painted as the villain, the cold-hearted aunt who made a little girl cry. No one seemed to remember the 12 years of empty space. The birthdays I missed. The school plays I never saw. The entire childhood I was robbed of. Sarah wasn't just asking me to buy another plane ticket. She was demanding I erase her choices, that I pretend her absence had no consequences. I wouldn't do it. On Wednesday, I dug my heels in. I booked the flights, non-refundable. I paid for the hot air balloon ride in Cappadocia, the confirmation email, a sweet little ping of victory in my inbox. Then I took Freya out. Not for a quiet chat. Not to smooth things over. But for a celebration. We went to a travel store at the mall. I bought her a beautiful brand new Osprey travel backpack in her favorite teal color. I bought her a leather-bound journal to document our trip. I bought her a fancy new neck pillow and a silk eye mask. We laid it all out on the table at the food court, a treasure trove of adventure. Take a picture, I told her. We have to make this official. Freya hesitated, looking at me with worried eyes. I don't know, Aunt Lily, maybe we shouldn't. post anything. Not right now. Nonsense, I said, my voice bright and brittle. This is your gift. You have every right to be excited about it. Don't let them ruin this for you. I took the photo myself. A perfect flat lay of the new gear, the journal artfully opened to a blank page, the backpack front and center. I uploaded it to my Instagram. My caption was simple. Asterisk. The adventure begins, counting down the days until I get to show my amazing girl the world. Number Turkey 202. 4 number. Best niece ever, asterisk. I tagged Freya. I made sure my profile was public. The phone started buzzing almost immediately. A text from Clara Times, Lily, take that down. Now. Asterisk. A text from my mother Times. Please don't make this worse. Asterisk. I ignored them. I opened Instagram again and watched the likes climb. It felt good. It felt like winning. This wasn't just a trip anymore. It was a statement. A declaration. You don't get to break a family and then show up expecting to be seated at the head of the table. You get the seat you earned. And Sarah and Olivia, they hadn't earned a damn thing. Let them look at pictures. It's what I had to do for 12 years.